I'm going to call this meeting the Oskaloosa City Council to order. Today is Monday, May 1st, 2023. We start with the invocation from Oskaloosa Police Chaplain Guy Allman.
Let's pray. Jesus, we love you and we thank you for many blessings. We thank you for an opportunity to come together as a city council, as a community, dear Lord. And I pray, dear Lord, that you would be with the city council as they make decisions. I pray that you would give them discernment, that they make decisions for the betterment of the community. And dear Lord, I pray that those who are here, that you would bless them as well. And these things we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you.
Could you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Same thing.
So before we get into the regular agenda, the first item that I have is to swear in our new Oskaloosa Police Chaplain, Guy Allman. The police chaplain and his wife Jane have been married for 38 years and have lived in Oskaloosa together since 1990. Guy was born and raised in Alabama, moved to Nashville, Tennessee to attend Trevecca College in 1980. He also graduated from Nazarene Bible College in 2017. Chaplain Allman has been active in the Oskaloosa community by actively participating in the Gateway Church of Nazarene, Love Inc., and the Community Emergency Response Team. In preparing for the position of volunteer police chaplain, Guy has attended various chaplaincy training sessions. He has attended the International Fellowship of Chaplains in August of 2015, the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy Basic Chaplains Training in March of 2020, the Rochester, Minnesota First Responders Chaplains Training, and also Serving Heroes First Responders Chaplain and Peer Support Training. He's been working informally with the local first responders since March of 2020, and so at this time I'm going to administer the oath of office. Chaplain Guy. Let's do this. Yeah, let's step around. Would you raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, Guy Allman,
I, Guy Allman,
understand that I serve as a chaplain
understand that I serve as a chaplain
at the pleasure of the Oskaloosa Police Department.
at the pleasure of the Oskaloosa Police Department.
I commit myself to live
I commit myself to live
according to the highest ideals of the police department.
according to the highest ideals of the police department.
I recognize the badge of my office
I recognize the badge of my office
as a symbol of public faith
as a symbol of public faith,
and will always seek to conduct myself
and will always seem to conduct myself
in a manner worthy of that trust.
in a manner worthy of that trust.
I take this obligation freely without reservation,
I take this obligation freely without obligation,
committing myself to faithfully discharge
committing myself to faithfully discharge
the calling and duties of an Oskaloosa police chaplain.
the calling and duties of the Oskaloosa Police Chaplain.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Welcome aboard. Okay. You need a signature first. There we go.
I'm a historian. I can say a lot of things. Nothing for us. This is nice.
And that goes back to the chief. And the pen goes back to the
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations, Guy.
Thank you.
I would first like to thank God for this opportunity to serve in this community. I would also like to thank Chief Bakey, the Oskaloosa Police Department, and this community to serve as chaplain for the Oskaloosa Police Department. Police chaplaincy is a ministry of compassion, presence, and prayer set within the world of law enforcement. With God's help as chaplain, I will provide support for police officers, their families, and civilians in their needs. I will be there to provide appropriate assistance, advice, comfort, counsel, and referrals to to those who may request support. Ultimately, to the officers, I will be a listening ear without judgment and with confidentiality as I walk with you on your journey as police officers for the city of Oskaloosa. I will be praying for protection for you as you will be the first face that people see in a time of need and as you meet trouble head on. I pray that you will be peacemakers or law enforcement officers, whichever is needed at the time. I pray for discernment and understanding in the times that you are serving in the community. I also pray that you will be seen as hope and will be appreciated for your willingness to serve the city of Oskaloosa. To the other first responders of the city and county, if I can ever be of help, please feel free to contact me. Thanks again to the police department, city leaders, and the city of Oskaloosa.
Gets us into the meeting. Roll call, please.
Almond.
Here.
Burnett.
Here.
Caligiuri.
Here.
Comfort.
Here.
Drost.
Here.
Hermson.
Here.
Ocean.
Here.
Next is the announcement of vacancies we have on various boards and commissions. First is the Airport Commission. We have one vacancy for a term ending in December of 2027 and one vacancy for a term ending in December of 2023. The Building Code Board of Appeals, we have one vacancy for a regular member and one for an ex officio member. The Historic Preservation Commission, we have one vacancy. It's for a term ending in December of 2023. And the Library Board of Trustees, we have 3 vacancies for terms that are ending in June of 2023. Next up is the opportunity for community comments. This item is reserved to receive comments from the community for concerns whether or not they're included in the current agenda. The community is encouraged to speak before the mayor and city council. Asked to keep statements brief, time limited to no more than 3 minutes. Any questions are to be asked of the city staff, the council members, or the mayor prior to speaking to the full council. So that way concerns can be properly researched and perhaps answered away from the meeting. Comments are to be directed to the mayor and city council only. So that's what I read every time. And I usually finish up by saying, what is it you think that we as a council should know? We're here to listen. However, I do give the council the privilege that if they need to ask a clarifying question of the person speaking, they do have the opportunity to ask that question. I would ask that if someone has spoken before you, don't repeat what they've said. The idea is that let's make this the most efficient communication we have. And it's also my intention to run for about a half hour if there is anyone who cares to speak. And so I'll open it up now, but at 20 till 7 is when I intend to finish things up and then move on with the rest of the agenda. Would anyone like to speak tonight? Okay. Brant, why don't we start with you and then you next?
All right. Brant Bowman, live on South Market. I just want to thank the workers for the job they did converting it to 3-lane. It went really smooth finally after the many false starts, and we're just really happy with the way it's changed traffic flow, especially around 11th on the way to Edmondson. We think there will be a lot less accidents there, so good job.
Okay. Thank you. That's Brant. Okay. Next. And your name and address, please.
Council, my name is Todd Hoke, 1516 South 2nd Street, here in Oskaloosa. My wife and I have been taking care of the Edmondson cats since around 2013. These cats, 6 senior cats, only know this park as their home. Wednesday, April 26th at 1:34 p.m., the city called and told my wife and I to remove the houses and to stop to feed the cats. The city gave us less than 24 hours to do this. So the next day, which is Thursday, the 3 groups of caregivers went to City Hall to plead our case. There was no discussion or compromise, and we were then given 1 week. 1 week is not enough time. We are willing to do whatever is needed to fix any issues in the park. The city never gave us the opportunity to fix any issues they had with the cats in the park. This is all could have been solved if the city would have reached out any time before April 26th. We are willing to get their issues fixed. but they did not notify any of us that there was a problem. We are willing to do anything to resolve the situation. Thanks, and please help us save these 6 senior cats at Edmondson Park. And it would be inhumane and a travesty to remove these 6 senior cats. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak tonight. Christy Smith, 1901 Edmondson Drive, Oskaloosa. Oskaloosa is my hometown. I was gone from here for 21 years while I served active duty in the U.S. Army. I retired from the U.S. Army, moved back here, went to work for the Social Security Administration where I worked another 12 years, and then retired from there with a total of 33 years federal service. I found the first feral cats in the park in 2013. In 2014, I worked with the animal shelter. We got a $2,500 grant from the ASPCA to have all of the cats spayed and neutered. At that time, we had 15 cats spayed and neutered and released back to the park. This was all approved through Michael Schrock, and there is documentation, which I have, showing that reports were given to Michael at that time about the process, and he approved it with Lindsay Syme at the time, who was the director of the animal shelter. Of those 15 cats, now only 6 are left. Of those 6, they're all between 10 and 12 years old. They sleep 90% of their day because they're old. They only have probably 2 or 3 years of their life left. The 2 main words I want to bring up tonight are compromise and resolution. I think there is a compromise to the situation by moving their cat houses on down south, maybe establishing a feeding area away from the shelter. I know one of the problems that was brought up was bird droppings in the shelter from the cat food. However, the shelter was all clean the other day, and we were just all there last night at a meeting, and there's bird droppings everywhere because there's rafters in that shelter. And as long as there's rafters in the shelter, you're going to have birds sitting in the rafters pooping all over the shelter. So that's, like I talked to Tom Jimenez about this, and he said he brought it up to council years ago about closing in those shelters that have the rafters to fix that problem, but nothing was ever done about it. So we have some ideas. We met with Charlie Comfort at the park last night. We've got some great ideas to make this a workable solution for everybody. And, we're well-educated, smart people, all of us. I don't see why we can't come up with a solution to keep the community cats, and that's what they are. They're community cats. I'm there lots of times in the evening feeding the cats, and people go get their McDonald's, come out and sit there and eat because they want to see the cats. And they bring their little kids out because the kids want to see the cats. Just like people go to Forest Cemetery to see the ducks. It's just same thing. So all I'm asking council is please have a discussion, and please see if what you can come up with, that maybe we can come with a workable solution, that all of us smart, talented people can come up with a resolution to this situation. And I'm not even going to call it a problem. It's just a situation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi guys, I'm Tammy Sparks. I live out on Edmondson Drive. Chrissy and I went to school. We've known her for many years, and I'm going to make this really short. Those cats are her life. They're like children to her, I swear. I mean, and if she goes somewhere, she makes sure somebody's there, feeds the cats. I've been down there many times, and those cats are not out bothering people. They just kind of hang out down in the little woods, and I agree. I've read too that trying to rehome a feral cat, they will try to come back to where they're at, and they're probably not going to live. And if you could see, they're beautiful big cats, and they're not out bothering anybody. So, I agree too. There's birds all over. I live right across the street, and we'll go over to the shelter, and there's bird nests and droppings all over every table out there. So I just hope, pray everybody could get through this. These cats aren't going to live forever. They're probably 10 to 12 years old now, so I think they're down to 6. There used to be like 20. I swear to God, every cat out there was having babies, but they did get them. They neutered and spayed. They're not having babies anymore, and just, if everyone could just hold on and move these little homes, move their little feeding area somewhere till their day's done, and I think everybody will be happy. I can't stand to watch her. She will be heartbroken, devastated. So, thank you.
That's his wife.
Dee Hoke, and I live at 1516 South 2nd Street. I'm one of the 5 people who are the regular caregivers to the cats in Edmondson Park. The 6 cats left have been there for over a decade and are part of the TNR program between the Stephen Memorial Animal Shelter and the city. TNR means Trap, Neuter, Return, and is the most humane and most effective way to control feral cat populations. These park cats have never bothered anyone, and they bring joy to many people. We've had numerous people tell us they come to the park specifically to watch the cats. We are hoping that we can all come to a compromise and that the City Council will allow these senior cats to live out their remaining lives in the only home they have ever known.
Good afternoon. My name is Cheryl Holub, 713 High Avenue East here in Oskaloosa. I am the Executive Director of Rescue Me International Animal Foundation. We are a licensed 501c nonprofit in the USA and a CIF registered NGO in the European Union. I relocated back to Oskaloosa in September after spending the last 7 years living abroad in Europe. One of my foundation's primary objective is implementation of TNR program and management of community cat colonies. Included in that is collaborating with private and public entities to find viable solutions for humans and community cats to coexist. Last week, I met with Fire Chief Vaughn and Alex Valstar, I believe on Wednesday, April 26th, at my request to discuss and offer my services to the city to lead and coordinate a TNR program. As was just mentioned, TNR stands for Trap, Neuter, Return. It is a globally recognized program where both male and female cats are trapped, sterilized, and released back to the original location. To be clear, this is not a removal program. TNR has been found to be the best solution to effectively, ethically, and humanely reduce stray cat population. It's a proactive rather than reactive approach. Since last Wednesday, I have spent many hours at the park speaking to both sides and observing the Edmondson cats. I want to first recognize and acknowledge the complaints and issues that have been brought by the city, but I also want to recognize and acknowledge the compassionate field work that for over a decade has been given by the dedicated group of volunteers. I also note that no formal or informal complaints were brought to the attention of the volunteers prior to last week. In my professional opinion, I believe there is a viable compromise, and I preface this noting the following. The number of cats at the park is 6. 6. They are old. By veterinary standards, they are deemed seniors. They are slow-moving, far less active, and at the end of their lifespan. If this were a young cat population, for example, 1 to 3-year-old cats, then perhaps it would be viable to move the colony. Given their age and health status, my professional opinion at this time is to not attempt to relocate them. But what I do propose includes the following points. The colony needs to be moved. Both feeding stations and the housing stations need to be moved further down the trail. Monitor and routinely cleaning and sterilizing of feeding stations and the houses. And we need to either construct or buy aesthetically pleasing houses and feeding stations and only provide the number needed for the current population. A positive partnership and relocation has existed regarding those cats for years. It is my hope that given the specific circumstances of these cats in particular, i.e. their age, we can work together to allow the cats their golden years in the only place they have ever called home, while also honoring the vision the city has for the quality of Edmondson Park. I am here to help. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Connie Rogers, University Park, Iowa. And I'm President of Humane Society. And we would like to offer our assistance, since we helped start this project however many years ago, if there's any monetary requirements to help build new houses for the cats. And this has been a successful program, and we would like to see it implemented in other parts of Oskaloosa. If there's anyone here that thinks that stray cats should just be rounded up and killed, I'd like for them to stand up right now, please, and let that wish be known. No one standing. The alternative is staying near the release, and it works. We are overwhelmed at the animal shelter. We have no place to put all the stray cats. We need to do a comprehensive spay near the release program in this city. It works. There are communities around the United States that beg for cats from neighboring communities. Unfortunately, we don't live near one of those because they have a comprehensive spay neuter release program. I wish that we could be one of those so that we didn't have to neutralize animals in our shelter. And we can't do that because if we begin neutralizing cats, I say that rather than kill because that's a hard word for me. If we begin to do that, then we are no longer qualified for grants like the one that we got that did the program out at Edmondson Park. Thank you.
Alicia Helm, 401 South Market, and I'm going to totally change the topic. I do care about the cats. I'll keep it brief, but I want the council to consider the 4 following things. Number 1, putting a moratorium on any future plans to build a new airport facility in Mahaska County. Number 2, withdrawing from the South Central Regional Airport 2088 agreement. And number 3, selling any property associated with the proposed South Central Regional Airport site. And lastly, number 4, changing the recent conversion from 4 to 3 lanes on A Avenue and Market Street back to 4 lanes. Thank you.
Oh, hang on a second. We get to ask questions. We get to ask questions, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's start with the 4 lanes. Why do you care going from 3 lanes to 4 lanes? I'm just curious.
I don't want it to be 3 lanes.
Besides you don't want it to, what is there any other reasons?
It congests the road. It adds commute to my daytime that I can spend with my children, that I have to be sitting in the car while they're complaining that they want to get home.
Where does it congest at? I drive it every day, so I'm trying to figure out where you're congested. Out by
Kinetic Edge. Sometimes I sit there 5-10 minutes every day waiting to get up that hill to get to my house.
5-10 minutes every day. That's good to know. Okay. Airport. Why do you care? You live in town, so I'm curious
I
what's.
I used to live in that area. I know people there. My parents live in Site B area, so they know people. I know people that are going to lose their ground, their job, basically. For
So if the landowners are willing to sell their property, you don't have a problem with it, though. Is that what you're saying?
I don't have a problem if they're willing, but I don't think they're willing.
Okay. All right.
So.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Can I get your name?
I mean, whatever you got to hand out, we'll take it too. If you got something, sure.
Alicia Helm.
Thank you. Mayor, we had a note that they're not hearing us on TV. I wonder if that's speaker on?
Can you hear me now?
Light. It's not, we don't have the blue.
Don't have the blue? Sorry.
I know Nick wants to be heard, so he'll wait.
You are correct. See if you Burnett for the win.
We're getting blue on and blue off.
You're going to have to cut a check.
Hey, we got it on mute officially.
That doesn't control the TV sound.
Okay, you got it.
It's William Sherman that does it. Is there anybody here from?
My understanding it was all controlled remotely and it's individual microphones.
Yeah, and I thought it was the blue.
I mean, here's the audio. Oh, that's the audio.
Let me check.
Double check, make sure we didn't run out of battery.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. Those will only things I know is the
But this
blue
doesn't
and that.
amplify in here, that's only for the
Gotcha,
board.
okay.
Oh,
You guys
okay.
speak up.
Yeah, it's just for that, yeah, okay. Go for
Good
it.
to go? All right. First of all, I'll absolutely associate myself with Alicia's comments. I think everybody's pretty already well aware of that. I definitely also wanted to lend my support to the folks that have been taking care of the cats and providing the TNR program. A couple people reached out to me. I found this incredibly interesting. I found out that it was going on. I live actually out in rural Mahaska County, and we had a couple strays show up at the door, and the feral cat colony was like one of the solutions that was brought. Fortunately, at the time, Stevens was able to take one of the cats that showed up on our door, but strays are a problem. These TNR programs, even they're kind of a long-term solution. They're solid solutions to stray cat problems in a community like this. I think it's something we should probably have at Edmondson, maybe a couple other places. I really, really hope that you can all work together and find a solution that works and to keep that program going. Finally, I just want to bring up the Thursday night activities on the square, particularly the nights we have the band and Thankful Thursdays. I've performed at that event before. I think it is a fantastic addition to a spectacular tradition. The last time I performed there, we did have a couple of fairly alarming safety concerns with a couple of people who were maybe been a little overserved, or maybe had a little bit too much before they came for the free booze. And I had mentioned this to Chief Bakey, but I just wanted to put it out there. And I mentioned also to the chief that, I would be willing to pay out of pocket to have a couple of police officers there. But I think that's a service I think the police department should be ready to provide for special events. I know that a lot of event promoters would be willing to pay for it. And then also maybe for larger special events, maybe it would be beneficial if the city looked at a couple of preferred vendors for event control and crowd control and security and things like that, and made that kind of an easier thing to put in place for people who want to do events in town. That's all I have for you this evening.
So, hey, Nick, so you don't think we should stop serving alcohol, though?
Absolutely not. No,
Okay.
sir. I just want to tell you clear.
Just wanted to make sure that wasn't the
serve
answer.
the alcohol. But anytime you have people and alcohol in the same area, there are risks. I don't think we should be averse to those risks. I think we should be open to mitigating them.
Thanks.
Thanks.
You got 30 seconds left. No, just kidding.
The city of University Park, where I'm from, pays for a TNR program throughout the town. They pick the whole bill up, they do a feline leukemia test if the cats have feline leukemia, which all those cats come from Oskaloosa. We put them to sleep and pay the bill, and otherwise we trap you and release. We have people throughout the town that feed the cats. We don't have any chipmunks, we don't have any rats, and we don't have any mice. Can I have 30 seconds more?
Certainly.
I just wanted to say that the cities of Des Moines, Davenport, Muscatine, Iowa City, Victor have all passed TNR programs with their city council. Their city council has all passed and approved TNR programs for those cities. So those are just a few that I found online this afternoon. So just for your consideration.
Are all of you going to stick around for our conversation later?
Yes.
Oh, good. I'll wait until then to talk. Then I got.
Questions
All right.
too, but I'll wait till the discussion.
Okay. And I'm serious, that if you've got questions to ask of the speakers, don't be bashful.
Well, I'll ask two of my many questions. The TNR program, is there shots as part of that, as far as rabies? Would be my concern. I grew up at a park, and feral cats were very much part of my childhood.
Rabies would be required in the state of Iowa for a TNR program.
Okay.
And we did talk.
That strengthens your argument.
One of us talked to Shauna, or who at the shelter. And she said she'd be willing to vaccinate the cats at the shelter, or at the park, and keep track of it and do it yearly, and keep track of it.
Okay.
It was supposed to be done through the TNR grant that we got.
Okay.
It was supposed to be kept up yearly by the shelter, but it just kind of got
Okay.
put on the back.
Okay. Because just as a community member, I would see that as the second concern,
Yes.
you know, and that. So I was just curious. I didn't know if anyone
Yes.
maybe hadn't brought that
We
up.
brought that up.
You don't want an acronym that's too long.
Animal shelter's willing to
Okay.
implement that and get going again on that.
Okay. And as an environmentalist, I'm getting the disconnect with the bird droppings. So feral cats are sometimes known as killing birds, and then they kill rodents. Is sort of that, you know. So I'm missing the.
Okay,
I got the
saying
disconnect.
that they were saying that
it sounds
we
like the
were-
birds are
we were
everywhere,
feeding
which
the
would be
cats.
good.
The complaint was we were feeding the cats in that shelter, in
Okay.
shelter C, and that the cat food was drawing the birds.
See, I don't understand that. The birds
were
would
eating
go,
the food and causing the drop.
Okay, there's just a lapse in that.
Yeah, and honestly, I can say in the 12, 13 years I've been feeding the cats, I've not found one dead bird.
Okay, okay.
And, but I do think a lot of it has to do with the rafters, but I do think some of it
Yeah,
might have had to do with the cat
yeah.
food.
Okay.
I'm gonna admit some of it might
Okay, I
have
was
to do with
just-
them coming to eat some.
I was
But
just-
if we don't feed there, that might take
Okay.
care of some.
I was just curious, because usually the complaint with feral cats is that the birds are gone.
Yeah. No,
So I'm like, I'm missing something.
we were all sitting
Okay.
there last night, and there were plenty of birds
Okay,
around, so,
okay.
yes.
Okay.
So you had an overall question for everybody. So I have an overall question too, and I've got comments for later, but I do have a question, and that is, if you'll see pictures later, but would any of you take your family and have a picnic in the shelter the way it is right now? And maybe that's a rhetorical question, I don't know. You'll see pictures later. I wouldn't. But that doesn't mean that maybe my standards are different than yours, but I'm thinking your standards are where you wouldn't show up with a family and walk into that shelter and say, I'm going to have a picnic here today,
Yeah.
and feel comfortable doing that.
Well, and there's other shelters there too that have rafters that have bird droppings.
Well, I'm not talking about just that. You'll see pictures in a little bit, and
Yeah.
and I don't think they were staged. So so I just want you to think of that in your mind too. That's just a rhetorical question that you can think about after you see the pictures.
But if that's not gonna be an issue anymore, then,
Well, we hope not, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly.
You know.
Yep. Okay.
so, right.
I've seen the photos, so I can address, I don't think anybody here is denying the photos or what was seen.
Sure.
I guess a few things. One, if there was a concern, and I don't ignore, I mean, I acknowledge full well that there was not perhaps how it should have been done.
Right.
They weren't given the opportunity to correct or make amends.
Right.
They were given an ultimatum.
Well, they were, and that's what tonight's about, right?
Right.
So yeah.
But I think moving forward, and again, I'm not going to defend,
Sure.
defend things and going backwards. But I fully acknowledge, I think we all do, they've seen the photos of what was found there.
Mhm.
There's definitely ways to prevent that from happening
I
and
agree.
move forward in a positive direction.
No, I agree 100%.
But I don't think there's anybody that would
Yeah.
would deny of what was found and you know.
But I do think accountability will be an issue, and that came up just a little bit ago when somebody said that's what the $2,500 was intended for, is to make sure they got vaccinations, but it got lost in the shuffle. How do we keep it from getting, so another rhetorical question, how do we keep that from getting lost in the shuffle moving forward? Because the city doesn't want to keep track of it. So how do
No,
we
I
ensure
think
that
moving
those...
forward, there needs to be accountability.
Right.
And that's why in my statement, I addressed, there needs to be routine.
Right.
Whether that's a daily check, and that's just, I think they're open for discussion with that. It's the people that, most of the colonies and the communities that I'm involved in, there is daily, weekly, monthly accountability. There's a report back. Do we see any additional cats?
Yeah.
How are they handled? That sort of thing. So I think it's an open conversation with
Yep.
accountability, 100%.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just one more thing. Todd brought his power washer over there and cleaned it before, and I've offered to the city 3 or 4 times to paint those picnic tables. I've got a hold of the city, and I just said, just furnish me with the paint or tell me what that paint color is, so that I'm painting in the same color of the rest of your picnic table. And I said, but I'm willing to paint them there regardless of bird droppings, cats, anything they need painted. And 3 or 4 different summers I offered and no one ever got back with me. So, and that's
Thank you.
just for that.
I just have to say one more thing, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Don't apologize.
All right. We're talking about being in the park and all the tables out there that are dirty. We have family reunions there, and we always have to wipe tables down.
Well, of course you do.
So that, and I'm gonna be,
Not just at that shelter.
no, at the big one, down by the playground.
No, I understand.
But I've lived here all my life, and the little shelter where the cats are, that is not one that's been, people go rent it and hang out all the time. It's always been kind of a empty shelter. I'm not saying it's because the cats weren't even there at the time. So I'm guilty when I have fed those cats, opening a can of food and just slamming it on the ground.
Yeah, sure.
Putting cat, so if you have pictures, I haven't seen them, you probably have seen cat food on the, maybe on the table, on the ground, but, you know, I'm guilty of putting it there, but like they've all said, we know that has to change and
Yeah.
be away from there. So I hope everyone will like think from tonight on that all that stuff is over with.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
She's back.
Sorry. Just one more thing. So from a veterinary standpoint, and I don't think I mentioned this, I mean, we're talking about probably, I would say a good estimate is 3 years left of these 6 cats.
And you don't think any more will follow behind them?
If they do what they have been doing and what they would continue to do is
Yeah.
trap them. So ideally what happens in an established colony, it is per part of the protocol that we usually implement, is that any new cat that enters the colony is trapped in a very timely fashion. So if it's an adult cat, more than likely it's one that was in a previous pet. So if we get it in the first few days, trap-wise, and get it to the shelter, then it can still be socialized. It might have some trauma, obviously, involved, but over a few days, a week or so, you know, we can viably take that and do an adoption. If they're kittens, we have, there's I would think 100% success rate grabbing up baby kittens and taking them, socializing them, and adopting them. So they're continuously doing that. They've been doing that,
Yeah.
is my understanding. That would continue to happen just because stray cats would wander in.
Sure.
There was mention of cat, like if you've smelled a tomcat, you know what that smells like. I mean, I'm on High Avenue and there's a little orange fella that's frequently my front steps. It's a potent smell. There's no argument. Provide a little bit of heat and it's awful. If there are stray cats out there doing that, these senior cats would not be spraying anymore. First of all, just because of their age and the fact that they were neutered within 6 months of their life, that greatly limits their ability or their desire to spray. If a wandering cat comes through, this is the time of the year that cats are looking for love. So if there was, you know, a potent urine smell, like a male cat smell, it could very well be that there was a stray cat wandering through looking for love. And they'll travel 4 to 10 miles to mate. So we can't 100% control that part of it. But this existing population, I mean, they've survived their entire life in Iowa weather. The fact that they're 10 to 12 years is actually quite a significant accomplishment, to be quite honest. I mean, usually cats like this are a 7-year program. I would say they have 3 years left, if anything. So.
Thank you.
I was just going to mention that we have taken, the animal shelter said it's about 20 cats that we've taken in over the years that have wandered into the park, and we've captured, all of us have captured them and taken them to the animal shelter. So we are doing that.
Going once, going twice.
Not seeing anybody else. So I'm going to ask one question to the folks who were proposing moving them a little further to the south. How far south?
About length of a football field.
Okay.
Half the length of a football field.
So
Yeah, there's room down on south along the bike trail. It's a little further off the bike trail than what they are now. But
Okay.
it's still flat down in there, so the houses could be flat, you know. And then it would be far enough from the shelter that we wouldn't be near the shelter at all.
who would be the owner of that ground?
The park. It's still the
Still
park's
part of
ground.
still part of Edmondson Park.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, the person that owns the ground on around the corner down there, behind the horses that live there, have offered to let us move the houses on his private property, but we would really rather work with the city and keep them at the park, because we'd be looking at other problems probably if we moved them on his private property.
Okay.
Back to their area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you took them 50
Thank you.
miles away, they would still try to go back to where they are at.
And most likely die trying, from what I found out today. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and another, like she was saying about us rounding up the stray cats that come in, like even when the animal shelter, our animal shelter is full, I've taken 3 litters of cats up to the Animal Rescue League. And if we're not there to anymore, like if we have to eliminate these cats from the park and we're not there to police these strays that come in and get dropped off anymore, you're gonna have a bigger problem than what you have now, because these are gonna be unneutered, unspayed cats that are going to be coming into the park, and then they're going to start populating, and before long you're going to have 20, 30 cats at the park. And right now we're policing those cats and getting rid of them. We don't add to the colony. As the colony dies out, it goes away. When these 6 are gone, it's done, over with. The houses come down, it's done.
Okay.
You know, unless you want your kids. So we've been policing up all of the cats that get dropped off over there or wander in, so.
Okay.
I have one question. So how did this all start? Anybody know?
Yeah, it all started back in 2012
Okay.
when I was walking my dog over there and initially found two cats.
Because I recall back in 2014, I was on council then, we had this discussion too about the cats.
Yes.
And do you recall how many houses were there at that time, if any? Houses?
The grant initially paid for me to build 6 houses. And then out of my own money, I built probably $1,000 worth more of other houses.
Well, I was out there last Thursday afternoon, and there was a few people here that was with me, and we counted 12 houses, cat houses,
Yeah.
down on the embankment there.
Yeah.
Some are, there's like 3 or 4 together, but then down, if you go down deeper, you start seeing more.
Yeah.
Those
Now, a
are
lot
fun.
of those that are down in that gully
Yeah.
could probably be done away with
Yeah, they're
now.
probably not in use.
No. But the ones, if you saw the ones that were in the big deck boxes,
Yeah.
those are 1 inch.
Where I see the fresh hay and all, the more up on top by the edge of the wood line somewhat.
Yes. Those are the better ones that can sleep 2 cats. And, but like I said, if they'd rather some nicer looking ones be built or something, we can do that, but.
Because when we talked about
We
it.
can clean up that gully and pretty much get rid of all those, because some of those original ones were built back in 2014 and they've about seen their better day anyway.
It was back in 2014, I don't recall what month or what, when we had an open discussion about the cats back then, and there was a lot of them then. In fact, there was a litter back then too.
Yeah.
This might be part of the litter from back then. But I don't ever recall any agreements though between the city and.
Nothing was passed with council at
Right.
that time, it was just between the shelter and.
Right, and I know we
Michael Shaw.
discussed about having the cats neutered back
Right.
then.
And they were all in November 2014 was when
Right.
they were all.
Okay,
And then the city did have the sign made
right,
up,
I remember that.
yeah, to put down there for us.
So this TNR program, did I get that right? TNR program, that is something from the program that the shelter has, correct?
Yeah.
And I have some paperwork on that.
Okay, but that's with the shelter, correct? The animal shelter? That program? Because someone mentioned there's other cities in the state of Iowa has this
Yes.
program.
Mhm.
It sounds to me Oskaloosa has it also.
It's never passed through our city council,
Oh.
yeah.
So it requires city council approval.
At least it has in all of these other cities. Because in what I've read, it's passed through council.
Because the animal shelter also represents the city and the county, correct?
Serves.
Pardon?
Serves.
Serves. So I don't see why really the council needs to approve that such program. It's like saying, why don't the supervisor approve the program also?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a good program, it's great, it's just formality on the things.
We don't have room for all the animals.
Right, I understand.
The shelter is a mess. I mean, there's so many of them. So what we do sometimes at the animal shelter is when anybody here not have a neighborhood cat. So You know, it doesn't belong to anybody, but nobody wants to have it taken to the shelter and have it put to sleep.
Right.
So when we get a call for an animal like that at the shelter, and we don't have room for it, they'll ask it, is anybody feeding it? It doesn't belong to anybody, nobody wants to take responsibility for it, but they don't want to put it to sleep. My group, the Humane Society, will pay to have the animal, the rabies shots and have it neutered. So that's a illegal, informal spay neuter release.
Okay.
We'd like to see more of that happen.
Okay.
To get rid of this problem, to control this problem. Whether we need to have your permission or not, I don't know, but we can't keep paying for this. Our group's raising, I can't make many more of those caramel apples. I'm getting too old.
Right.
It's pretty much unlimited.
I bought 2 this year.
Yeah, I don't know what happened back, what the outcome on 2014, when we did talk about this. It was left in the hands of the city manager at that time, the administration, so what happened after, I don't know. If there was any agreements made or what have you, but.
I think it was just a verbal agreement.
Yeah, okay.
And I just have some notes between him, a formal report that the animal shelter did at that time and provided to the city manager about how many cats were spayed and neutered, and that he hadn't gotten any negative reports at this time about the cats and that.
Okay.
One more speaker?
I just wanted to add, most often the TNR programs are operated by entities, like I said, like a Humane Society or like My Animal Foundation. And that's why I met with these 2 folks on Wednesday at my request, because I wanted to talk about specifically, there's some obvious liabilities, right? So I could be as good-hearted as I can get, but I set out a trap, and there's a wealth of liability issues that comes up immediately, whether I'm trapping on private or public property, right? So I don't want to initiate that. None of us want to initiate that. I offered my services and expertise in that, which is why I wanted to meet with folks at the city to just discuss that, pose some, explain what it is that we do, what that program entails, and then talk about liability and how that looks with the city. I think we left it where I was going to email, I'm going to email and explain the program, what my intention were, and then let the city attorney discuss things and see where liability, and if it's something the city wants to pursue. I would imagine that the shelter's budget and time as far as employee hours is maxed out to be able to take on a TNR program. So most often than not, in small, large municipalities, it's an organization like an animal rescue group, a Humane Society, something like my foundation that implements and does that.
Thank you. There was.
I'll tell you guys one more thing. I know where there's a lot of sick cats, and I don't know who takes care of that, but the block around 5th Avenue West to South A, that whole, there are cats with gunk eyes that can't hardly walk, and they're having babies, and they're everywhere. So if some program could start, that would be the best place in town to collect a lot of ill cats.
Okay. So anyway, as we finish up this conversation, there was one letter that was submitted for council consideration as well. This is from Dr. Teresa Carmichael at the Mahaska Vet Clinic. To the members of the City Council, I'm writing in support of a compromise regarding the Edmondson Park community cat population. I acknowledge the concerns raised regarding the shelters and feeding issues and agree these are a matter of importance. However, significantly relocating a small group of bonded aged cats is not in their best interest either. The hardest part of managing a community cat group is finding private individuals willing to oversee the management of the group, and this group has very dedicated caretakers. Please consider revamped housing with all parties' approval, inching the group a little further south along the wooded ravine, and a timed feeding schedule that would not leave any standing food, but still decrease bird predation. The Animal Rescue League in Des Moines successfully runs one of the largest community cat programs in Iowa. The ARL has always been very generous with their time and advice when Mahaska County is asked, and they are a great resource as well. I had hoped to attend in person, but urgent and emergency cases today will make that unlikely, so thank you for your time and consideration in reading this letter. I am available for any feedback or further questions. Sincerely, Dr. Teresa Carmichael. So with that, I'll close the call to the public. Next on our agenda is a few proclamations. The first one is a proclamation for National Police Week. The proclamation reads, whereas we recognize and honor the selfless and heroic service provided by the men and women of the Oskaloosa Police Department, and whereas we rely on law enforcement officers and community service aides to keep our neighborhoods safe, enforce our laws, and respond in times of crisis, and whereas everyday law enforcement officers throughout the nation face the threat of violence and danger, routinely putting their lives in jeopardy to defend others, putting themselves at risk of injury, disability, or even death, and whereas the Oskaloosa Police Department has made and continues to make important changes in policy, policing, and transparency, including the enhancement of services with professional development opportunities, leadership training, community outreach, bias-based training, and community policing initiatives. And whereas these men and women, by their distinctive service and dedicated efforts as law enforcement officers and community service aides, have earned our highest respect and deepest gratitude. Now, therefore, I, Mayor David Creutzfeldt, hereby proclaim the week of May 14 of 2023 through May 20th of 2023 as National Police Week in the city of Oskaloosa, and to join in commemorating law enforcement officers, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities and their invaluable contributions in upholding justice, enforcing the rule of law, and protecting the innocent, have established for themselves an enviable, enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. It's signed this first day of May 2023. Chief Bakey, would you please come up to accept it?
Please come up too.
Yeah, can you look this way?
Thank you.
Make your mom take a break.
More free donuts? More free donuts?
Come back around a couple more times. You might just take your stuff with you. Thought about it, decided not to.
Yeah, he likes to walk.
The second proclamation is one regarding First Responder Day. And so this one reads, whereas first responders, including 9/11 dispatchers, police department, sheriff's office, firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, emergency management and homeland security agency, community emergency response team members, and volunteers alike are essential to the health and well-being to the citizens of this community. And whereas these individuals engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education so they are prepared to respond to the needs of the community 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, they do so with passion, dignity, and pride of service. And whereas first responders are often the first to respond to emergencies and often put themselves in harm's way to protect and ensure the safety and well-being of others, these individuals are truly the backbone of our community. Let it be recognized that this does not come without sacrifice. And whereas the city of Oskaloosa, along with Mahaska Health, recognizes the value and accomplishments of our first responders and the critical services in which they provide the citizens of our community, then now therefore I, Mayor David Creutzfeldt, hereby proclaim the first Saturday of May as as First Responder Day in the city of Oskaloosa, in conjunction with the celebration of First Responder Day, and it is signed this first day of May 2023. Is Sabrina May here? Over here. Keeping score?
Yeah.
Yep. Look at you, Okay. The last proclamation for tonight is the one proclaiming National Preservation Month. And it reads, whereas historic preservation is an effective tool for managing growth and sustainable development, revitalizing neighborhoods and fostering local pride, maintaining community character while enhancing livability. And whereas historic preservation is relevant for communities across the nation, both urban and rural, and for Americans of all ages, all walks of life, and all ethnic backgrounds. And whereas it's important to celebrate the role of history in our lives and the contributions made by dedicated individuals in helping to preserve the tangible aspects of the heritage that has shaped us as a people. And whereas the month of May is known as Preservation Month throughout the United States to celebrate heritage and community pride in historic places, to promote tourism and to show the social and economic benefits of historic preservation. And whereas the celebration of National Preservation Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of the Oskaloosa Historic Preservation Commission and other volunteers who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement and preservation of Oskaloosa's history. Now therefore, I, Mayor David Creutzfeldt, hereby proclaim the month of May 2023 as National Preservation Month in the city of Oskaloosa in conjunction with the celebration of National Preservation Month. Now, I know Sean Christ is here. Are there other members of the Historic Preservation Commission? Would you please come forward as well? Nobody wants to balance this picture. Yes. You care to say anything?
Mr. Mayor, many of these volunteers have been on this commission for several years. They've all had some sort of involvement in the facade, downtown facade improvement project as well. They are dedicated, and we also have one opening on the board as well, if you who's interested. Thank you.
So Sean, are you the only guy on this board?
Actually, I am the staff liaison to the
Oh, the staff liaison. I got it. Okay, all
They
right.
deserve the recognition. They do the hard work.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Okay, getting into our regular agenda. First up is the adoption of the consent agenda. These are all items that are routine in nature. They get acted on typically in one motion and one vote. The only thing I wanted to draw the attention of the council to is items E and F. These are setting public hearings on a proposed ordinance amending the current electric franchise and natural gas franchise fees. Those hearings are going to be on the 15th of May, our next scheduled meeting. Do we have a motion of support for the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Hermson?
Yes.
Ocean?
Yes.
Almond?
Yes.
Burnett?
Yes.
Calgery?
Yes.
Comfort?
Yes.
Drost?
Yes. Okay, that passes. Getting into the regular agenda, first up is the Great Places presentation. I believe Beth Danowski or her designees.
Maybe both of us together make like half the best of it. Haley's many cool things she does. How do we share this? When we planned, we didn't plan with election. Well, thank you for letting us come in and talk at you about Great Places designation. If you are familiar with who I am, my name is Andy McGuire. I'm the Executive Director at the George Daly Auditorium.
And I'm Brant Bowman. I'm the Director of Theater at William Penn and the President of FACE of Mahaska County.
So it's been getting into a year since we've been designated a great place by the Department of Cultural Affairs. And so to just kind of go through a little bit of what's been going on in the past year, you got to forgive us. We're not always very good slide guys, so just, bear with us here. So we're really happy to be here. We were designated as the Great Place on July 25th, 2022. And since then, we've become part of one of 42 other communities in the state designated as an Iowa Great Place. A lot of this designation is to help our community showcase unique and authentic qualities that make it a great place to live. The other thing that stands out about our designation, which is unique amongst a lot of the other communities, is that we were designated because of the efforts of the Arts and Culture Roundtable. So there were 7 organizations that were put together that helped make this designation happen. And And one of the lovely things about this, both Chris Kramer, the director of the Department of Cultural Affairs, and John Berg, the program director of the Great Places programs, has said to me multiple times over the past year that group of organizations and the things they do is what makes our designation very special. It's unique amongst the other things, and so it's the efforts and the continued coordination of those arts and culture groups in the arts and culture sector that makes our designation a little bit different and a lot more special than a lot of the other groups.
Yeah, and they repeated over and over again about cooperation, that Oskaloosa just has a spirit of cooperation. In fact, we meet once a month in what we call the Arts and Culture Roundtable, where we share events that are going on and how can we help each other out before the Great Place designation. And other communities are looking to that, like, oh, let's get all of our groups working together. So that's something we're doing special here that was recognized.
So when we talk about building that authenticity and that identity and pride in Oskaloosa, and looking at the arts and culture sector as one of the major gears that makes that run, part of the reasons for that is if you look at this slide, $4.5 billion in economic activity in Iowa comes from the arts and culture sector. I believe this was from last year's statistics, so it's 2/3 of Iowa's economy. It generated 43,000 jobs in our state. We have probably, especially for our size of community, we have a lot of organizations that help power that in our community alone. One of the things that we're working on amongst the groups is actually working with Musco and William Penn and a few of the other partners with the Economic Development Committee. So we're trying to figure out how do our events literally impact the community around us. Not just with tourism, which is a big draw, but also just within our community's internal economy.
And one thing I want to stress is that there's a lot of opportunities that are going on, like at Studio Oski, to bring artists into the community, and we want to help foster opportunities for artists to share their work, like at Envisions and at the Co-op Gallery. And I would like everybody to envision every individual artist as a small business. So really, when you buy art locally instead of a poster of something at a certain craft store, no shade, where you're actually spending money that has more power locally than if you spend money at a big corporation and it goes somewhere else.
So as we look into this slide here, it kind of talks about the vision plan. Every Great Places community has a vision plan that they're putting together. We're still pretty early in the process. Each designation is a 10-year designation. So the things that we started working on last year, especially as we've been to the annual meeting, we learned immediately we weren't quite thinking as big as we ought to have been thinking. So we're starting to hone in is what do we want this to look like going forward. One of the things that you'll see us focus on a lot in the next year is communication. Is what are the things that all these groups are doing within their individual timelines? How does that tie into the city's comp plan and vision plans, and the same thing with the county? There are a lot of intersections there that if we just are looking in the same direction, we're going to get a lot farther than if we're trying to plan a lot of things from the ground up, all from sort of like a siloed approach.
And speaking of communication, some of you may have been at the Eggs and Issues. That was the Great Places groups, arts and cultural events shared what we were doing with the community. And it's just our focus we want to be to work together and to share what we're doing in the community through events like that.
The other major thing we really want to focus on going into this next year is to really, again, going back to communication, understand the mechanisms at which we can connect with the community about the things we're working on, not only to communicate what we're doing, but also to try and bring in from the community the things that they want to see. A lot of being proud of your community is enjoying all of the really unique and this word comes up a lot, authentic. I really love that word. It's just true to ourselves. And how can we make sure that we are representing our community as a great place to the authenticity of our community? So as we look over this year, a lot of our biggest things come from a lot of different individual places. Obviously, from the George Daly Auditorium being the thing I can talk about the best, there's a lot of things to be super proud of that we feel like we brought to the community. Number one is probably World Fest. We're the only community in the state of Iowa that had these music groups come in. Okra Playground is a group from Finland, In December, after they were here, they reached #7 on the world music charts, and they were here in September. It was an incredibly cool thing. But the stuff we're really proud of isn't just the things that come in from across the world. Just this last weekend, we had 32 K through 5th grade students do an elementary school musical. There were 32 students on that stage on a set that was 16 feet wide and 6 feet tall, and not a single one of them, well actually one did need a microphone for specific things, but they all could be heard from the back of the room. So teaching students how to be confident and present well and use their creative skills is something that the auditorium is just really proud of within our great place.
And I'll focus on William Penn, because that's where my paycheck comes from. But, you know, we can look at other communities that have gotten the terrible news that their universities are closing, and what an impact that'll be with you know, 800 students not moving to town anymore, and professors moving. And we want to be a place at William Penn where we are growing the arts. We're partnering with these community groups. We partnered with the Georgia Daily just a couple weeks ago to do our spring play. And we are investing in the arts and growing the creative culture. Ultimately, my big goal is to bring the downtown arts culture and the college closer together. It's always a struggle, but I know we can do it, to have that real vibrant generational interchange.
Also on the list, I don't want to speak for any of the organizations out here, but like the public libraries, the Carnegie Library, it is one of the oldest institutions in our community. They have a makerspace lab that would put most colleges to shame. The buttons that we make for people who are visiting, I make in the makerspace lab. They're really fun. Studio Oski is a new center with a bunch of artist studios that they get to rent and work in. You got
I do my printmaking there, and that was abandoned. You know, who knows what happened? It might have been torn down. Instead, it's getting repurposed, and little pop-up businesses are moving in there.
Nelson Pioneer Farm's working on a major renovation of their lower level that's going to bring it into a more modern museum look. That if you haven't seen the drawings, go out to Nelson Pioneer Farm and take a look at it. If you haven't been to Nelson Pioneer Farm since like your 3rd grade field trip, go out to Nelson Pioneer Farm.
And FACE, we've secured funding to update some old bathrooms and start working our way towards the street side of the Oskaloosa Arts Center. We're always looking at growing. We have some programs that are we're starting to cap out. So we've come a long way since the pandemic really was a struggle, and now our like little kid creative juices classes are filled to the brim.
With Rosso and Wine and the Envision Gallery in the mall, you're going to start seeing much more events like the 4th Friday event that just happened at the end of April, where you can do an art walk through town, get to Brush by Jude, Muse, I was saying? Yeah, the Art Center had stuff. At the end, we got to see the middle school play at the auditorium. So you're going to see sort of the synergy happening where these groups are going to start chaining those things together. So we just have these more broad events. Nothing that's like brand new and special. Oh, well, it's all special, I think. But these things exist. It was just, we're going to start chaining them together so you can have fun the whole night.
And have some,
you're going through.
And to have some fun themes like silly hats and stuff like that. Because who doesn't want to walk around, look at art, have free cheese samples, and wear a funny hat?
So this graphic here came from the Department of Cultural Affairs. I really love it. I don't want to punch down at our neighbor with the tulips, but I always love a map that you see the bandstand in the southeast corner of Iowa, not a windmill, so I should be pretty excited about that. But this represents all the Great Places communities that have. So it's just a really lovely thing to start seeing all these groups together, and I'm really proud that we get to be a part of this map. We got to catch up with our slides here. No, that's all right. So as we are looking towards the future, like I said, we went to the Great Places annual meeting. We learned that the things that Great Places projects, they have one big infrastructure project that you get to be a part of every single like designation period. It doesn't have to be just one, but one is usually what's recommended. When we were looking at what these projects were, this is where we really learned that a lot of the things we were initially looking at weren't really quite big enough. There are groups that are redesigning entire corridors with every single facet of their community working on it. So it's not just the really beautiful sculpture that brings people into a block, but it's making sure the sidewalks are accessible, and it's making sure electricity is there for events. It's making sure all of these things that, I mean, as a theater guy, I don't know much about what it takes to make a sidewalk, so what are the things that we can do to start pulling in, like the comp plan, so that we can start building these really beautiful things all together?
And we went to Marshalltown, and we got to see in Marshalltown, they had a end of town that was very, it wasn't in its finest day between the veterans area and the stadium, and they went from an area that was boarded up buildings and they were embarrassed of to, the first thing they did was they brought in a giant sculpture that kind of looks like an upside down St. Louis arch, maybe, or an upside, or a smile. And they built that first, and then surrounded it with some recreation opportunities and an amphitheater, and businesses moved back in. And now it's a bustling street with families and activities for all. There's soccer games going on, and they all meet around this upside down giant sculpture. And in fact, there's a guy who owned this little pocket bar. I mean, this bar is so small. And the coordinator of the project said, when we first built that, he told us how much he hated it, and now he loves it.
He like has coffee out, like overlooking it every day. If you're interested in what we're talking about, this is the 13th Street District in Marshalltown. There's a really fantastic place to eat there called the Flying Elbow. They're one of Iowa's best burger places. It's professional wrestling themed. It's very fun. But it's a really great example of across the board. It was, what was the facade improvements? What was the public art? What are the events that they can have there? How are they going to get these local mom and pop businesses to grow? What are the things that can make that whole corridor grow? I think we're going to go on to the next one. So, when we are setting ourselves up with what's going on in the future, we want to identify those things that are incorporating in like the biggest ways possible. There are a few projects on the pipeline that actually we're just starting work on. Some of it I've talked about meeting about the upcoming water tower project. Not only is this a really great project for beautification, but it's a really great pilot project for how are we going to look at making sure our creative community is involved in the process of making these things work. Obviously, we would suggest the Arts and Culture Commission that was suggested in the comp plan, which Brent and I were both steering members of, is another thing that we definitely think would help moving forward. In the end, it's not about creating like massive budget lines for arts and culture. I mean, obviously, as the art guy, I believe in paying for that art. But in a town called Grand Rapids, Minnesota, they started with a commission. And they started with the idea that just like 1% of their existing budgets would all be focused on public art. And what they learned over the time was they didn't have to rearrange their budget, they just had to be more purposeful with how they used their budget. They had to be more purposeful for each project to know how are they incorporating local artists, how are they going to make those beautiful things as beautiful as they can be, not simply just practical. Eventually, they found enough of a payoff that they do budget extra money for these things. And what they learned is after they started budgeting extra money, they spent all these years practicing how to do it with their existing budget and being very purposeful, that they were able to grow into something that now benefits the community in a lot of really fantastic ways.
One thing that I noticed when we were at the Great Places event was the cities that had lots of traction, that were doing lots of big major changes, were all finding fundraising opportunities though that benefited the arts. There was a lot of TIF agreements and other mechanisms built in to pour into the arts to rejuvenate an old district of town or that sort of project.
In the end, if it's a $4.5 billion industry in the state of Iowa, are we utilizing all of our organizations and all our efforts to get the maximization of tourism and of beautification in our own community? I don't know if that's true yet. I think it can be true, and I think this Great Places designation is going to help us along the way. It just will depend on how are we going to be able to coordinate those efforts between some pretty talented organizations, some very wise city council members, and a community that is really excited to see some wonderful things, some great things.
So a big focus of ours, I think, similar to what we did when we were doing the comp plan, there was a lot of meeting with community and gathering listening sessions. I think that's something that we have coming down the way, is meeting and working collaboratively together to align our goals and to really scope both what the people want to see to improve the community and what the arts groups see helping guide us to really achieve our potential of being a great place.
Awesome.
Are there any questions?
No. How often do Great Places meetings happen? Is it an annual thing?
So the 442 groups, they have at least an annual meeting. There are a lot of different points throughout the year where there are webinars and stuff that the groups connect. And even then that breaks down in different ways. So like we're talking with the program manager, John Berg, next week just to make sure going into this next year we kind of know what is that vision plan going to look like and how are we going to move with it.
We also get invited to a lot of meetings to talk about funding opportunities coming along, grant opportunities. We kind of get the first round of emails out about that and opportunities to really get in the room with the people on the Iowa Arts and Culture Committee and to have them help guide our plans.
Yeah. Or like sometimes if grants are being scored, Great Places is one of those check boxes that's really nice to have.
Yep.
Has anybody ever been in Asheville, North Carolina? It's
Yeah,
known for
I
its
have.
artsy. That's what it's known for,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah,
mean, that's the
it's a
whole it's
fantastic
tourism on art.
community.
It's a real quirky little place, but it's bigger than here. But it's kind of cool. The only feedback I have for you guys is if next time you could send a couple people that were a bit more enthusiastic, that would be great. Okay, I mean, come on.
I have a couple questions.
No, well said though, guys. Well said.
Go ahead.
So the reorganization of state government is going to be doing away with the Department of Cultural Affairs.
Yeah.
Where will Great Places fit now? Because I've heard a lot about, I think it's economic development?
Yeah, so it will be folded into the Economic Development Authority. To my understanding, no one is leaving their posts. It's just being organized differently. I don't exactly know. We talked a little bit about this at the annual meeting. They don't really know exactly how everything is going to shake out within that organization quite yet.
Yeah. As a historian, and I've served on that board, it is of great concern. We are going to be probably the only state that has no Department of Cultural Affairs. History and art are only going to be valued for their economic contributions. And that should really concern people.
We're on a race to the bottom, so.
Yeah, we have been at the bottom. We used to be.
A personal opinion, of course. So.
Yeah.
Well, some of the conversation was about how in the past 10 years, especially since I've been back into the state, the Department of Cultural Affairs has done a lot of really nice work, not just looking at the larger urban communities, but trying to include more rural communities and what's going on. That's part of the focus they put onto the Great Places designation, which they actually came to us for before we were applying. So I hope that experience will give them enough care and understanding to not just let whatever it is go. And I think for us as a community, especially if we start to see value in this, then we too have that responsibility to let the state know, hey, this is important to us. It has made a difference. I mean, if you look at Marshalltown, some of their biggest projects, they happen because of Great Places funding.
Right.
And so we just need to make sure that if we're going to be a squeaky wheel, then we should be a squeaky wheel.
We also have a lot, there's national funding opportunities and regional, like Arts Midwest too, where, we've got our, eggs in lots of baskets. So. But we know what you're saying about, we've all had some concerns that way, but so far, Chris Kramer's still going to be there, and it's a relief to
We would gladly accept a letter of support from the City Council that we would send to the Iowa Department of Cultural Affairs about how important this is and what you want to keep happening.
I think
just you guys mentioned the collaboration amongst the different arts and cultural groups that you guys have started with the roundtable. I also appreciate, I think Beth and I talked about this, maybe even just this morning, about your folks as you're putting your vision together for what Great Places is and the arts and culture in Oskaloosa. You're looking to collaborate with the city and our strategic plan and the plan Oski and how that all works together. And that's what it takes to be successful. So thank you for doing that as
and
well.
There's major businesses in town that we work very closely with. They're partners. Like you look at the mall, and not the mall. And just the opportunities there, working with Mike, and you know, we actually meet occasionally with Mike and just share everything that arts-wise that are going on. It's a resource.
Your Great Places Arts and Culture Subcommittee still meets pretty regularly.
Good.
So,
That's good, yeah. I would challenge the council. So I went on their tour when the Great Places folks were here. And so, you kind of know about it. You drive by these places every day, but you don't ever go in, right? I mean, and so I was a jock in high school, and these guys were whatever. Now I'm not the cool kid on the block, and these guys are, right? I mean, nobody's going to come to Oskaloosa because of football, right? But what I would challenge you to is that I struggle with, you drive through every community in Iowa, it says, you drive down the highway, it says, visit our historic downtown. Everybody's got a historic downtown. What would make us different? I think they got something here. I think if you want people in Oskaloosa, I think they really got something here. So I'd challenge us to figure out how to help them. So, anyway.
I would add to that a little bit in that it's not if or, right? One of our partners, especially the tourism committee of the chamber, part of the reasons we talked about just lining up timelines together is because the MCRF and the Conservation Center said, hey, why don't we see what you're doing? Because these are the things we want to be doing. And let's make all that happen together.
Yeah.
So really, it's not just arts and culture. It's not just sport. It's all quality of life. It's all of it together.
I agree, but I do think as an identity to market, I think you got something.
We have some great ideas that out of the Environmental Learning Center, they've got some fantastic plans about making outdoor recreational opportunities in nature with artistic flair. And we were discussing it on our way to the Great Places meeting, and we meet with help me out, Klingon, Chris Klingon, and his ideas were on his own. He came up with the idea bigger than I could ever have dreamed. So good stuff going on when we work together. It's like I was told by my mom.
Thank you so much for taking this.
Thank you very much.
Andy, thank you. Brent, thank you. You guys are more than season 9%. There's a half of it.
You don't want to know my thing.
So item B on our agenda is a presentation on the Downtown Facade Improvement Project, Phase 3. Sean Chris, take it away.
Thank you, Mr.
Are you
Mayor.
done already?
Of course, I'm following Brant and Andy, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Show some enthusiasm.
Right, I wish I had half.
Okay, so the Downtown Facade Improvement Project, Phase 3. So a lot of you have been through 2 of these phases already. We just recently completed completion of the 3rd phase. We wanted to give you an overview of the 6 buildings that were part of this project. So we have here before and after pictures, and I'm going to take you through each one of these. So this is the United Way building. It's on the corner of the square at South Market and First Avenue East. So these are the before pictures on top. This building received a brand new roof, tuck pointing and cleaning of the masonry throughout. Actually, 3 of the 4 facades received this treatment. We replaced all the windows and heightened the first floor or the second floor facade windows on the front of the building. We also reopened that original facade on the first floor, which you can see here. Painting still is not complete yet. This is something that was removed from the project due to the weather conditions. This is something that the owner is going to do on their own here sometime this year. And then in the back, you can see same thing, new windows. We also removed this large vent duct that you can see here, and then replaced the doors there as well. So a lot of nice improvements there.
That's
I believe
awesome.
this was
Yeah.
the first project or the first building downtown that received a new roof, which was new for this phase and a new possibility for this phase. This is the Tropical Rays building, same thing, new windows. I love it when we open those window openings up, brick to brick. You can really see that change here. Again, more tuck pointing, masonry cleaning. All the buildings get new copings along the top. We get new storefront here, storefront glass, and then also a new door for the stairwell that leads to the second floor apartments. Next door at the former Mi Ranchito, again, more brick cleaning. You can really see the difference in the before and after.
It's amazing.
Once that brick was cleaned. Partial tuck pointing here, new windows, of course, brand new storefront down below, and you can see we were able to add those transom windows and open that
What
back
an
up.
amazing change.
And we're looking forward to the owner continuing their improvements to the inside of that building as well, and hopefully getting a tenant in there within the next year or two. Palmer's Law Office, real similar here. You can, again, another great example of what some brick cleaning can do to a building. So we had brick cleaning, we had partial tuck pointing, new coping, new windows. We also had new windows on the side of the building. The grant does give us the ability to do work on any part of the facade that's visible from the street.
Right.
So we've been able to sneak back on those alley sides a little bit as long as it's visible. They're okay with us doing that work. New storefront windows as well. One of the things the architect did was put in a secondary or sub beam here below to break that up, make some transom windows above, and then also all new tile surround around those windows. 116, 118, this is the former Bruxford's. You can see some major changes here. The picture's kind of small, but this was the one and only building in this phase that originally had arch windows. They were squared off at some point in time. The tops of the arches covered in plywood. We opened that back up brick to brick. So we got brand new arch windows all along the top, new paint scheme, and then brand new storefront on the lower level. We also opened up the transom to the second floor stairwell. And then we also moved the door, the entrance on this east building. It was in the center, that you can see here. At the owner's request, we moved it over to the far side, the corner of the building, to match the other side. So nice improvements there as well. And then lastly, the Muse building, the only one on South Market. You can see the changes here, again, real similar. We were able to work on the side. Tuck pointing throughout. This building was painted, so once the brick is painted, it has to stay painted. But one thing that we do is we do the tuck pointing after the brick is painted, so you can still see the individual units on that wall. New paint, new windows, new storefront. They did want to keep their sign, so that was reinstalled for them. We were also able to do a little bit more work on the stairwell than what was shown in the plans. The plan showed this the railing just to be repaired, but we found that it really was too far gone. So we were able to get a brand new railing within the scope of the project. So the railing is new, the treads are new, and then we were able to do the tuck pointing back to the first entrance of that upper floor apartment. One of the things I also wanted to do here was throw some numbers at you, and bear with me a moment, but I think this is some good news. So phase 3, the project cost was just over $1 million, $1.06 million. 500,000 of that was a CDBG grant, so that was our Community Development Block Grant. The city contributed $339,000. That was for roughly 25% of construction. We also paid for architectural design and structural assessments as well. Owner contributions combined, they pay for about 25% of the cost of construction. The owners paid about $223,000, so that was phase 3. Overall, all 3 phases, $3.2 million. $1.5 million of that was CDBG grant money, so almost half paid for by funds outside of the community. City contributions, $890,000. Owner contributions, $663,000. And then also on first phase, I wasn't here yet, but George Daly Family Trust contributed $117,000, I think, to help us deal with an issue that was discovered on that first phase on the north side of the square. Also some good news. This is something you were talking about, the Iowa Economic Development Authority. They did a study back in 2018. They wanted to see how the program was impacting the communities who participated. And what they found was statewide, again, participating property values increased by 43% on average, compared to a drop of 0.2% for all commercial properties in those same cities that participated. So that was pretty substantial. So I was curious and I wanted to see how we have fared here. And with the help of Lindsay Thomas at the assessor's office, she gave me the information. Our participating property values increased by 41% on average, And that compared to an 11% increase of all commercial properties locally, citywide. So I think we're doing pretty well with this program.
Brings a whole new meaning to investing in your community, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Wow, it's pretty awesome. Yeah.
And again, I think this is something that as I talk to people who are visiting the community and come to, again, work from us across the street, that's one of the first comments people make is how beautiful the downtown is. And this facade program has been a huge part of that. So, I mean, thank you to the block grants and the entities involved with that, and thank you to the city for supporting. And again, hopefully, I think we're looking at a phase 4.
We are.
Cross your fingers. Let's hope, because again, it just continues to build up our community.
So I know we've had some folks that have turned us down. Can you go back on blocks that we've done and get the folks that didn't say yes in those blocks or not?
We could, and we're hoping to be able to do that with a phase 6 to return downtown.
Because I'm just thinking, you use those numbers right there. I would think that'd be a good sell job to say, get a 41% return or 11%. You know, a property value increase. So
At a quarter of the cost.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's outstanding.
Building it only has to go up 25%.
Nice you can do some with the old Herald building though.
Oh, it's being worked on.
We are the only, at least we used to be the only city in Iowa that has received 3 of these grants.
Yep, first one.
So that is really huge to this community, and also because we are a Main Street community, that helps us get this type of grant. So I think that it's showing its worth, and appreciate everybody who's willing to be a part of it and everybody pitching in.
So who prepares these grants?
Area 15 Regional Planning Commission writes the applications for us.
Alright.
They also do the administration.
Okay.
Without them, this project would not be
Gotcha.
possible.
All right, cool.
So who is
Kudos
that?
to them.
It's Area 15 Regional Planning Commission. They're in time.
I know we do. I remember him being there for a couple of the meetings we had. Somebody was here from them, I think.
Yeah.
Early on.
That was probably Brad Grief. He has left
Yeah.
the commission. They're trying to restaff and get up to speed.
Gotcha.
So that's one of the challenges that we're facing with these next couple of phases.
Very good. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay. I think you are back up for number C, or letter C, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can decide if this one's as exciting or not.
No, vacant
It's all up
buildings.
to you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, get that echo effect going.
Right, no pressure. All right, so this is something that some of you have already seen. We did discuss this with you, I think, back in September last year. We did a brief presentation on vacant buildings and some of the thoughts and reasoning behind it. So we wanted to bring something back to you tonight. We are working on on bringing a draft ordinance to you, and I think you will see that at the next meeting. So we wanted to give you kind of a preview of that, give you some updates on what's behind it, and then give you some of the parameters that you'll see when that ordinance comes across your desk. So again, just kind of a recap, some of these slides you've seen in some shape or form from the last presentation, so I won't spend too much time on this. But if you weren't part of that last time, what do we want for our community? I think some of this may be obvious, but we want nice neighborhoods. We want them to be attractive and have quality buildings in them. We want to keep our housing stock, because not everybody can afford a new home or newly built home. We want safety and security. We want these buildings put to a good use. We want them to be maintained well, and that preserves our property values, or will it increase our property values? And then that helps us maintain that healthy tax base that we need for our budget. How do we get there? This is that threefold process that we talked about before. Nuisance code enforcement is the one big one. It's something that Chief Vaughn and his staff are working on a daily basis. We're doing rental housing inspections. We've been doing that since 2018. And then vacant buildings ordinance is something that more and more communities are doing to help supplement their efforts to reach these goals. And then also financial assistance. We're doing that in some aspects with the Housing Trust Fund, where we have funds available, and some communities often make funds available for certain improvements or critical improvements, things that they might need for their homes. The concerns with vacant buildings, again, you've seen all or some of this. But just generally speaking, if the owners are absent, there's less attention and there's less activity in the buildings, and there's just less people around, which can lead to poor maintenance and upkeep, or illegal activity like squatting or other activities, and we have had problems with that here locally. drags down the neighborhood and also the economy. It leads to decline, and then it does tend to lower property values, which does hurt our tax base. So since that presentation, we've adopted a strategic plan, and we do have support in the plan that I think gets behind this. One of the three priority areas listed here is vibrant community. It talks about downtown quite a bit, enhancements to the downtown district, and then also increasing the occupancy rate of downtown. We do have a lot of vacancies downtown, and we hear that from time to time from the community. Another priority area is a safe and healthy community, and then lastly, a growing and prosperous community. And that particular priority gets into specific goals and strategies that are for this program, in my viewpoint. So increasing housing stock, also the quality and access to housing options. And then it says to target our existing housing stock and to specifically focus on abandoned housing. And then the comprehensive plan, it discusses this as well. One vision in the plan is a community that supports lifestyle, quality of life, and the goal under that is for quality neighborhoods. It talks about reinvestment, conservation, and enhancement of our existing housing. Our existing housing, it tends to be affordable, right? Often entry-level housing for many of our residents. And then one specific action under that is to create a vacant building registry, which includes an inspections procedure. So that's what we're going to be presenting to you here at the next meeting. And this is kind of a summary of the parameters of that ordinance. So on the left side of those parameters I mentioned, on the right is just a definition of vacant buildings, how it's currently drafted. So I won't spend too much time on that, but these are the parameters that are in the ordinance right now. So if a building is vacant for 180 days or more, it needs to register with the city, and this would be on an annual basis. They would pay a fee for that, and that would be $90 per year is what I figure is needed to cover our expenses. And that would be to perform not just the registration, but also to do the inspection. So we would not hire a company like Iowa Inspections or another contractor to do this work. We're estimating about 200 buildings, so this is something we would do with our existing staff.
How many? 200?
That's a very rough estimate at this point, yeah. Yep, so that $90 would cover both the registration fees, the administrative side, and the physical side and equipment to perform the inspection on site. And again, that would be once per year. It would apply to both commercial and residential properties, and it's also proposed to apply to partially vacant buildings as well. Vacant lots would be exempt, so if you have just an empty lot with nothing on it, that would not have to register. This would be for buildings only. Indoor storage, this comes up quite a bit. Maybe this question crossed your mind, but what if someone says, I don't have to register my building, I use it for storage? Well, storage itself does not constitute occupancy of a building unless it is permitted by the zoning code. So if they're in an industrial district and they have a mini warehouse or a mini storage building, personal storage building, and it's permitted by zoning, then they would not have to register. That would be considered an occupied use. They would need to describe their future plans to us. We don't need architects or engineer drawings, but we would have a section on the form that would ask them to give us their plans, whether that's to put it up for sale or to continue to make improvements incrementally over time. We just want to know what their thoughts are. We're going to ask them what their thoughts are on using that building going forward. And then the inspections, we talked about that. So there would be exterior inspections by our building inspector. That would do an exterior, he would do an exterior assessment, make sure that there are no code violations, that the building is secure. And if he were to find some sort of violation, then we would process that. So we would make sure that the building is safe and secure from the exterior, and that would be for all properties, commercial and residential. And then our fire department will be doing interior inspections as well, and this is something that Chief Vaughn and his staff would start up, so that would need to be determined yet. But that cost is included in that $90 fee as we have proposed. So those are the general parameters that we're looking at this point. We've looked at, I think 4 other communities. We've modeled ours after Marshalltown. We also looked at Knoxville, Newton, Marshalltown, and Hiawatha as well. And we're seeing more and more communities adopt this throughout the state.
Question. So I guess I don't see this being, other than $90, I don't see this being much, I don't see a lot of teeth here.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you can put, maybe you can't put a lot of teeth in it, I don't know. I mean, so let's take you had a picture of it. I mean, I've been here 9 years this month, and the building on the west side of town I don't know what it is, what it was, but it's been empty the whole time I've been here. And sometimes they work on it a little bit, sometimes they don't. There's never been a for sale sign on it that I'm aware of. The one on top, whatever it was. I don't know. Like I said, 9 years ago it was empty when I moved into town, and it's still empty. So, so all they have to do is pay you $90, and I don't really have a plan. I mean, then what?
Yep. I haven't seen any good examples where we could force somebody to
That's
do
what I
something
wondered.
with the
Yeah,
building.
yeah. I didn't know if we could put any teeth in it. So really, it's $90, and they do have to have it to code, though, right? I mean, if it's not to code, then they're gonna have to spend some money to make it code. Okay. All right. I'm all for it. Let's do it.
And I could see where this would also prevent things like buildings that fall down.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of
Yeah.
those
You would hope
surprises.
anyway. Yeah.
Right, but
Yeah.
Well, I once heard our square described as a Potemkin village, which is a historic term. When Catherine the Great was going through Russia, they built all these nice facades that were beautiful looking. And as she went through the train, she goes, "Oh, look at this wonderful town." But there was nothing in them. We have a Potemkin village on the square. There's some beautiful buildings. That one bank building I look at every time I stop at this light, and the construction was finished in 2009. It proudly states that. It's been empty all 5 years that I've been here. And, you know, collecting buildings isn't the same as collecting shoes for somebody, because it is our economic development. You know, there's not much going on our square. When I go to other towns smaller sizes than ours, there's restaurants and bars and things like that, you know. So I really like this idea, and I like the facade project and that, but we need some activity, not a Potemkin village.
There is a fine line when it comes to property rights.
Right.
So we will be addressing conditions, quality, code, nuisance. That's where we draw the line.
Right, and that's understandable.
We will have good information when we can collect all of the information on the vacant buildings as to the why they're vacant, and that would be informative for us. If it's a financial barrier, we have programs we had talked about, like housing rehab, for example. We will understand what's the issue, what's the hold, and having this conversation regularly when we do the check-in on an annual basis. I think we will keep coming and talking about maybe incentivizing the owners into doing something about those properties, but we have to walk that fine line.
Yeah. And I've heard Marshalltown mentioned several times today. My great-great-uncle D.W. Norris had bought Marshalltown Times Republic, and then he also bought a fledgling little furnace company called Lennox and that. And so he had been one who was so into the community development and serving on many state commissions, getting Iowa out of the mud, and, you know, all of that. But the third generation of that family, I don't come from that part. I come from the poor side of the Norris family, and that, but they left. And then you saw, you know, Marshalltown struggled for quite some time, you know. So, you know, that's just something to be aware of in generations of, you know, financially successful families and what it can do. When Lennox moved its corporate offices to Texas, it left a huge hole in that town. And I think that's something, you know, the same happened to Newton, it's Maytag, you know. And,
I think the benefit of it, though, is that while we made, I mean, I can drive around town and pick out I know the buildings that are vacant, or a lot of them, but for the city to have an inventory of that, so when somebody contacts Sean as development director for the city, interested in what opportunities there are, rather than him having to go back and look through the map, well, let's see, well, we might have this, or we might have that. You've got an inventory to where you know where the buildings are, who owns them, and you can send these people in the right direction.
Right.
So rather than just being a point of contact, you can be a point of resource for people looking to come in and add something to our community.
It'd be nice if you could advertise it on our website too. But
And I
it's
think
not.
two, that listing is always good, always doing an inventory. And then two, what's for sale and what's not for sale, and what's, what's the availability in that.
So that begs the question, I guess, would this be a database that would be considered to be public information?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Because I thought it was interesting with the dog groomer. They just had to like randomly drive around to sort of the story of that. And, if they had a little bit more of a database and figuring, that out, they built up a great, thriving business in a short amount of time from a pretty ugly building.
So and my mind took off on what this database could be. So if it were to have the address, the owner, and then the assessed value, I would think that would be very valuable to anybody who was fishing around looking for opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, a lot of that is already publicly available, but I think it would be more readily available on request, certainly. And it would also be helpful to staff just to have that contact information. If staff finds an issue in one of these buildings, we find someone that's broken in, we know who to contact. Because you can't easily find emails or phone numbers through the assessor's website.
Let's say the number 200 is an accurate number. I'd be interested to see what the percentage of those people live in Oskaloosa are.
Right. I should have also mentioned, we talked a little bit about exceptions before, in indoor storage. If a building is actively listed for sale for a period of time, that would also be exempt and not required to register.
They're trying.
For a certain period of time, because we know
Appreciate
that
that.
it can take a long time to build these buildings.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Gets us to item D. Make sure. Okay. This is to consider a resolution approving the final plans, specs, form of contract, and estimated cost on our 2023 sanitary sewer project. Gardner Associates prepared the plans and specs. Scope of work is construction of 1,209 feet of sanitary sewer main, 9 sanitary sewer manholes, 599 feet of storm sewer pipe, and related construction items in the area north of Harbor Trace. Engineer's estimate, $869,165 for the project. If project's awarded, construction begins around May 15th, and work to be completed by November 17th. So this does require a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to the plans and specs for the 2023 sanitary sewer project? Shocking no one. I'll go ahead and close the hearing. Do we have a motion of support for this?
Moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ocean,
Yes.
Almond.
Yes.
Burnett.
Yes.
Calgery.
Yes.
Comfort.
Yes.
Drost.
Yes.
Hermson.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Item E is to actually award the contract for the project. So it was advertised, bids according to City Council authorization, with 4 bids coming in. Lowest bid by DeLong Construction. The bid was in the total amount of $754,649, which is $114,516 lower than the engineer's estimate. The engineering consultant for the project, Gardner Associates, reviewed the bids, recommends the award of the project to DeLong. And as mentioned earlier, starting around May 15 and ending up around November 17th if the contract's approved. This would also involve authorizing $75,000 for contingencies that come up, anything that's unforeseen. Do you have a motion of support to award the contract to DeLong?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
It's nice to see that there was 4 bids.
Yeah.
It's good to see there was 4 bids.
And it came in under estimate.
Significantly under for once.
Yeah. Surprise.
We were winning, Charlie.
Buy a lottery ticket, Bob.
People bid on,
I know.
It was nice to see that.
Roll call, please.
Almond.
Yes.
Burnett.
Yes.
Calgery.
Yeah.
Comfort.
Yes.
Drost.
Yes.
Hermson.
Yes.
Ocean.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Item F is to consider an ordinance amending Chapter 10.48 of the Oskaloosa Municipal Code regarding no parking. This is on North J Street. We did receive a request to investigate a parking restriction along North J between A Avenue and C Avenue. Currently, there is no parking restrictions. North J is a 31-foot wide roadway. It measures from back of curb to back of curb from A Avenue to B Avenue. That's a commercial district. 2 responses received of the 4 properties surveyed, with 1 opposed to the restriction and 1 in favor. The owner opposing has provided a letter and emphasized that the on-street parking is the primary parking for their business and would have a significant impact on their ability to operate. So North J Street reduces to a 21-foot roadway through a residential district with no curb to the north of B Avenue. This includes a ditch on the east side of the road. 5 responses received for this segment. Responses generally in favor of a no parking restriction. 4 responses in favor of the restriction, 1 response opposed. Of the 4 responses in favor, they were split. 2 preferred the east side to be restricted, 2 preferred the west side. So staff is recommending the no parking restriction be placed on the east side of the road due to the existing ditch. Traffic Safety Commission met on April 21st to discuss it. The Commission is recommending the City Council approve a no parking restriction along North J Street on the east side of the road from B Avenue to C Avenue. Commission is recommending to leave the parking unrestricted between A Avenue to B Avenue. And the recommendation is primarily driven by the roadway widths and the traffic patterns for residential versus commercial areas. And so we do have a map that shows that and the results of the survey surrounding properties included. So staff is recommending that we approve the first reading. However, it does require, so recommending approval of the first reading. So with that, do we have a motion of support?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Discussion. Roll call.
Burnett,
Yes.
Calgery,
Yes.
Comfort,
Yes.
Drost,
Yes.
Hermson,
Yes.
Ocean,
Yes.
Almond,
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Item G, this is an ordinance amending Chapter 10.48, again having to do with no parking. This is on North 2nd Street. And so staff received a request from Rob Lines to investigate removing existing parking restrictions along North 2nd Street between A Avenue and C Avenue. Currently, there's no parking along the west side of the road in this location. Street passes commercial properties from A Avenue to B Avenue and residential properties from B Avenue to C Avenue. The road continues north of C Avenue into a dead end, and this segment of road currently has no restrictions on parking. So North 2nd Street is a 31-foot wide roadway, measured from back of curb to back of curb. 16 properties surveyed, 9 responses received, and the responses were split with 5 in favor of the existing parking restrictions and 4 in favor of removing the parking restrictions. These are always so easy. The Traffic Safety Commission met on April 21st to discuss it, and while a 31-foot wide roadway through a residential district can support traffic with parking on both sides of the road, the Commission is recommending the Council leave the existing no parking restriction. This is because there does not appear to be a significant benefit to removing the restriction, and additionally, the Streets Department has expressed concerns with the maintenance of the road during the winter if there are cars parked on both sides of the road. And so there is a map provided for that. The staff is recommending the City Council decline to take action to make any changes on this. Do we have a motion of support for that declination?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that?
So we're voting to
Leave it.
leave it the way it is.
Leave it the way it is if you vote
Gotcha.
yes.
Just want to make sure.
Hearing no comments, roll call, please.
Calgery,
Yes.
Comfort,
Yes.
Drost,
Yes.
Hermson,
Yes.
Ocean,
Yes.
Almond,
Yes.
Burnett,
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Gets us to item H, and probably the reason we're still all here. So regarding animal control, Chief Vaughn, would you be willing to start us off with a report on what you saw?
Thank you, Mayor. So last Tuesday in our department head meeting, it was brought to our attention that we had a group of people feeding and harboring cats at Shelter C at Edmondson Park. I think if you look around, the department heads that you have, most of us had no clue that that was going on. That happened many, many years ago before us. And I've been in city government for about 28 years, and I've never heard of anything like that on city property. Obviously, we wanted to, go look at it. We were directed to go look at the shelter. We took some pictures. I think you've seen the pictures. It's been talked about tonight. There's been some really good discussion tonight about what's good, what's not good. Obviously, when we drove up, we had cats on top of tables. that were eating food, and obviously as we got out, they scattered. We don't want that kind of stuff in the city park, and I think the people that spoke tonight are in agreement with that. There was good discussion tonight. I'm glad that the people came. This is where they need to be heard, and we have to have these conversations in a civil manner. And I'm glad, that we did, and sounds like we have some decisions to make. The council that's sitting before me, I don't think adopted most of the city code we have. I'm the code enforcement officer. I am directed to abide by the city code we have, and that is what we did. Going to a couple of points, 6.04, 0.050 is unlawful for owners to allow animals to run loose in city limits. Who's technically the owners? That's up for discussion, but city code. The other one, 604.100, has already been talked about, and that's the vaccination of the cats. Obviously, it sounds like we've all got dropped on that. As far as the vaccinations go, hopefully that's going to get, taken care of through discussion, and that, will get, taken care of, and that issue will not be ongoing. As far as the cats in the shelters, obviously, I think we're all in agreement that that's not a good place for them. We've got a city pool right across from it. The goals of the program, I read these before most council quarterly meetings when I do my code enforcement report, and one part of it is to uphold the city council's directive to eliminate nuisance conditions that negatively affect community appeal, reduce community pride, and threaten to reduce property values. It's a thankless job, but somebody has to do it. So, as I said, it was good to see the people here tonight, because it's good for them to have their voices heard. It's good to have the discussion, and hopefully we can come to a compromise. If that's what happens, I would say that without council here tonight, I don't know if we'll take any action or not, but with it being on city property, if we decide for it to be on city property, it was mentioned before, there is liability that goes along with it. So just keep that in mind. I don't know, hopefully the discussions will be had later. I don't know how far the gentleman's property is that's off of city property, but if they can slowly be moved, if it's not that far, it's discussion to be had. I don't know if you have any questions for me from the code enforcement side.
I have maybe a combination. I have a couple. The TNR program that the lady talked about is in other communities. They said Iowa City, she named 4 or 5 other communities. Is the shelter places that they have in any of those communities, are they on city property?
That was a question that I was going to ask too. I do not know. I will say that I reached out to the towns around us of Ottumwa, Fairfield, and Mount Pleasant. None of them have anything like this.
Okay.
I'm an animal lover as much as anyone. I've had cats and dogs, but on city property, that's not. And I don't know what those communities that they talked about have in place. If they just have that TNR program, but it's not on city property, I don't know without making that phone call.
Okay.
I think Alexandria has some follow-up comments to make.
Thanks, Chief. Mr. Mayor, Council. So currently, all we're doing right now, we're just looking for direction from Council on adding further restrictions to the Animal Control Code more than what we have currently. Like Scott talked about, code enforcement issues. The way we found the shelter, that's probably not the best way to have the shelter currently, and not good for the public. So we are looking for a goal of quality of life in the city right now. It's a priority. Addressing nuisance so we can put the shelter back to use and provide a quality amenity. This is consistent with our strategic plan. So I do have a graph up here. So looking at past records, Shelter C has been rented once since 2016. Wow. And the only time it was rented was in 2021, and that was because there was no other shelters available. So if you look at like the Rotary Shelter, Shelter A, the Kiwanis Shelter, I mean, we've been renting those for quite a while, and seeing nothing in Shelter C, I mean, it makes me sad. You know, you have a beautiful park out there. So just trying to get everybody on the same page, get that shelter up and running again. So a little bit of history from what we have. No formal agreement was enacted by the City Council regarding use of the park. However, there was a discussion and understanding that allowed Stephen Memorial to operate and manage a pilot TNR program on a trial basis. There was no documentation on this, and if the cats were supposed to be fed by certain individuals and to have homes made for them and put on city property. So, accountability, who's responsible? Contacted Stephen Memorial Animal Shelter. I get a report from them every month on what they get brought in, what's still there, how many intakes of dogs, cats, other domestic animals. I do believe we have somebody from the shelter here. She can tell you everything that she puts on that report. So we did talk to them last week. We really didn't get much information on the feral cat colony. Like Scott and I talked about, they acted like they didn't know very much about it either. So they were able to give us the names of people in the cat colony that we talked to tonight. And yeah, we did reach out to them and try and have a conversation with them as well. I don't know if you wanted to see that email. Molly might have to help me over here. From Dave Dixon, our lawyer, about certain definitions, everything that's in our code. So animal means all living creatures, not human. At large means any animal found off the premises of its owner and not under the control of a competent person. I think I read that right. Owner means any person owning, keeping, sheltering, or harboring an animal. Running at large and prohibited in fenced ball fields. So it's unlawful for any owner to allow dogs, cats, etc., similar animals to run at large within the corporate limits of the city. Immunizations. No dog or cat shall be permitted within the city unless vaccinated. The cat must have a collar affixed, displaying or tag showing said that cat has been vaccinated, and it shows within the period of at least 2 years past. And as we heard tonight, I don't believe that has happened since it was caught the first time and sterilized. At large impoundment. Animals found at large in violation of this chapter shall be seized and impounded. Nuisances. Whatever is injurious to the senses or an obstruction to the free use of property, causing or suffering any refuse to be collected or to remain in any place to the prejudice of others, causing or suffering any refuse, garbage, noxious substances left or deposited in or upon park, public square, public enclosures. Definitions. Noxious substances mean any putrid, spoiled, which we have come, cat food, cat feces, cat, all that fun stuff. Material resulting from the handling, serving, and consumption of food. So this is just, what we already have currently in our code and what we were looking to add to the code. I don't have my paper with me. So, do you guys have any questions for me that I can hopefully answer?
Oh, I have one. Well, no, I guess I'll wait.
Yep, feel free if you like.
We haven't had a park director in all this time, have we?
No.
No.
Okay. Because, I grew up at a park. Part of what that was to do was to constantly monitor and intercede, verbally, friendly, what's going on. And as a city, I think we've neglected that responsibility for a good 10 years, correct? Making this all that much more emotional,
The last time we rented a shelter house out there, we found used condoms and syringes.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Which I find a little more upsetting than used cat food.
Yeah.
Well, we can all go into what's worse and what's not worse. This morning, I didn't know. I grew up on a farm. We had cats everywhere because they served a purpose, right? They were killing rodents, so had a lot of them. own 2 dogs now, don't own cats because my wife's allergic to them. We had 2 cats, and now we can't have them. So I'm for this. In fact, I think it ought to be expanded. But the accountability piece drives me crazy. I'm all about accountability. Somebody's got to take ownership, and it's not going to be the city. So but they haven't been, though, right? You saw that they haven't been. So let's talk for a second. I don't know if anybody knows the name Megan Weidman. I don't come into a conversation that I'm not ready to have a conversation about. I knew nothing about feral cats, so I called Megan Weidman, who's the Animal Rescue League director for the TNR coordinator for the state of Iowa with the Animal Rescue League. I talked to her for about a half an hour this morning. She was somewhat aware of our situation because of KCCI, and then I brought her up to speed a little bit on the rest of it. And she said, first thing she said is, after she saw the picture, she said, well, instead of using plates, you ought to be using tortillas to feed the cats. Then you don't have any trash, and the tortillas either disintegrate or get eaten, right? One good idea. She said, in no way, shape, or form should a shelter ever be used, ever, for this type of a thing. And then she said the caretakers have got to take responsibility. So this is the state director of the TNR coordinator telling us this, right? I mean, everything I heard from the lady back in the corner sounded like I was talking to her this morning, quite frankly. I mean, same words, same everything. She suggested, as you did, to set up a feeding station further away, and you might have to do it 10 feet at a time to get them to move. She said that when you feed them, somebody needs to come back and take the food up after 30 minutes. Don't let it sit. So you put food out. If it's not eaten in 30 minutes, you pick it up. The cat, she said, will learn. They got 30 minutes to eat or they won't eat.
Right.
That way you don't have what you see in the pictures, right? Let's see. What else did she say? That was. I mean, so I'm all for this. I did ask her the question. I said, so do you know of any feral cat populations in the city of Des Moines? And she said, no. Typically, they're on residential property. That's what she said this morning. So I've already talked to, I want to make sure I wasn't going to talk out of turn here, but I'm going to say what, and I talked to Roger earlier today, and everything I'm saying now, I told him earlier today, right? So I think they could be in the park. I know that's a concern, so we've got to have some sort of legal liability document written that says, because you all know it, everybody in this room knows it. Everybody tries to sue somebody every 30 seconds for nothing, right? So a kid gets scratched by a cat out there, they find out, oh, we talked about this at the city council meeting, and you didn't take them out of the city park, so you knew they were dangerous and didn't let them scratch my kid, and they weren't a lawsuit. So we've got to have something to do with that, right? I mean, I think we're all up here. Well, I can't speak for everybody. I haven't talked to any of the rest of them about it. I talked to Roger about it, and I talked to Amal about it. I think it's a necessary thing. Quite frankly, I would be disappointed if it ended in a few years, because you all said that we have stray cats out there. What better place to do it than control them in a situation like this? But you're right. Somebody's going to have to take ownership of it, and it's not going to be the city. And they're going to have to really take ownership of it. It can't be, well, we'll give you $2,500, and then everybody kind of drops off, or somebody changes and nobody takes care of it. It's going to have to be an organization, not a person, because persons move, persons change their mind, whatever the case, persons pass away. And so somebody, somewhere, some organization like the ARL, it's not Des Moines, it's the ARL that manages it in Des Moines. So that's what I found out today. I think it's a good thing. I think we've got to figure out how to manage it.
Yeah, I agree with Stephen. I think the vaccinations, I mean, I have to take my cat and dog. I think the vaccinations is huge. And like Steve said, there's tons of kids over there. I ride my bike. I ride the trail every day in the summer. You guys see me on there every day. So I think, you could have, I mean, I've walked up there. They'll come right up to you. Get somebody gets scratched and says, oh, hey, I've got an infection or whatever. So I mean, and I'm a cat lover. So I would definitely, the shelter is not the place for it. And that's.
When this program was started, nobody explained anything to us.
I understand.
So when you know better, you do better.
But
now we know better, and we have Cheryl on board, who is an expert.
Yeah.
So between the Mahaska Humane Society, the animal shelter, and Cheryl, I think we have things under control and can promise you that.
Well, I think we'll have to.
We know what we need to do
to
now.
the city's satisfaction, we'll have to come up with some sort of legal liability document.
So you tell us what we need to do, and we can go into a 2080 agreement or whatever you need.
And there are 3 of those cats that would never come up to anybody. I've been feeding them for 12
I
years.
know.
What were you going to say?
Yeah, our concern.
Yeah, I think where the ball got dropped was that Lindsay signed that applied for the grant, got the $2,500 grant, then it wasn't that long after that that she was let go from the shelter.
Yeah.
And I think that's when the ball got dropped.
Okay.
Because there wasn't another director hired right away, they just had interim people in, and, you know.
We know who she is, don't we, Bob?
Because I,
But if they're willing to do it now, that's great.
Yeah, waiting for an opportunity to speak.
go ahead.
No, I mean, I'll keep my comments short. I met with the CAT group at Shelter C last night and observed kind of the feeding process. And I did some research on the city website today, and I found from the, excuse me, I'm a little unorganized, January 20th, 2015 council meeting. That would have been their budget request at the time, just like they do every year. They reported, Stephen Memorial Animal Shelter reported on the TNR program in their annual report. At that time, they reported that they had spayed and neutered as well as vaccinated and returned the animals. Obviously, the ball got dropped along the way regarding upkeep of vaccinations continually, but there's a foundation there. From where I sit, I think the cats should stay. I think what we're hearing tonight, there's some accountability that we need to work through. I don't disagree with that at all, but considering, I think, all the circumstances, I think there's a fair compromise that Cheryl and the group has offered, and I think we would be prudent to look into that, balancing it with the interest of the city. Like Steve mentioned, there's obviously a liability concern, but I don't think any good is going to come out of just evicting the cats from the park at this point.
How do you feel about the idea of a slow-moving?
I was gonna.
Totally in favor of that.
Okay.
And I think that, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of the group, but from what I'm hearing tonight, it sounds like they would be as well.
Okay.
I can go along with that. First, I was like to get the cats out, get the buildings out of there also, but listen to everybody tonight. Slowly move this transition down to where, at the end, no cats on the property, including the condos. the 12, I think there's like 12 buildings down there.
We will take them out we're gonna clean them up and keep a couple there, when we move them down. And, when they're dead, we'll take everything out,
Right.
clean them up.
But on the liability side, the city needs to have something
Well,
in writing.
We've been paying them out of our pockets.
Yeah, and that's not.
We can come up with, we're willing.
Well, that will have to come from the city, what that agreement will be. But on the liability, there's a liability on the city side, just like we can go down rabbit holes here, the what ifs. So, I mean, I like animals, but I don't own any. I don't like hair in the house, but anyways, but I get it, I understand.
Janet?
Yeah. Question regarding like vaccines, they haven't had them. They probably haven't been caught for a while. How hard and how soon would it take to get, at least a rabies vaccine so we feel a little bit better than somebody, walking out there and potentially getting something from them?
I mean, the one and only way you get a cat, tame or feral, to enter a trap is by food.
Right.
So it's just, it'll be a matter of coordination. I mean, I would think.
We can pick up 4.
There's a few of them that are.
I would say the pictures I saw, I think they're pretty tame.
I think a 2-week period of time, if there's been a lapse in rabies, so the protocol would be to give them a shot this year. The following year it would be good then, as long as we make it within the 30 days of their 1 year, then they'll have a 3-year.
I was thinking 3 years, so
And
my cat gets
that should ideally get them to the end of their lifespan.
And one of the cats, when he was sick, we took him into the vet, and he has had rabies and he shot a couple of years ago. So one of them has had rabies shot since the original.
It's just a matter of, the whole thing, and I think I've talked to some other people about TNRs. It depends, because those cats have a routine, and there's 6 of them. I'm saying 2 weeks because it's the sound of that trap.
Yep. Sure.
That alerts
Me
the
and Larry.
other ones.
Yep.
It doesn't take long before they're all talking, like, did you see what happened to me, So it might take 2 weeks of time, but, and I think at that point, I would request that there would be some sort of signage, even if it was just a temporary sign, that alerts the general public, not the folks that are routinely feeding them, to not feed the cats. Just so people aren't going out there, because I've seen on social media, tons of people saying, oh, I take scraps out all the time. Again, I think signage is extremely important, and that helps as far as the liability issue as well, that those cats are part of a protected colony and that nobody except the designated feeders are to be feeding. We can't always prevent that, but you can at least say, liability-wise, what we've done in the past is at least we have a sign hanging that says, do not feed the cats. It's like
You don't go to a national park without seeing "Don't feed the animals." So what happens when people feed the animals? The chipmunks climb in your backpack.
Our legal team has been told in the past in these communities that that gives you some sort of liability coverage, is that you've at least put a sign out that says "Don't feed them," "Don't approach them," that sort of thing. And I can send you specific examples of signs that we have, in communities. I also brought, as anybody who cares to see them, some of the things that we've set up before as far as shelters, which is feeding stations and very aesthetically pleasing housing.
She said that this morning. She says that people because I said residences, and she said to make more residents feel comfortable with it, they make attractive shelters like you're talking about.
In the past, we've involved elementary school children, 4-H clubs, FFA, the shop kids out of the high school, retirees that, are great at woodworking. Our community is full of people that are talented and can build these things, and make them aesthetically pleasing. They blend in with the environment. They feed there, they're housed there. It's not,
my take on this is it's a super positive thing if it's done correctly. I do. Yeah.
That basically, like you said, it's in a park that would say, please do not feed, please do not provide, stay distance from them. These are, a recognized colony and move forward. So.
Well, I think the end goal on all this is eventually, I'm more concerned about the city property and these being on city park property.
Right.
I think we could work on this. Eventually, they'll be gone.
Sure.
Okay, but no more later.
No. The TNR programs, like the people that have contacted me in the city, the citizens have contacted me about TNR programs. I think I shared with you out there. Some of them are there's a lot around Forest Cemetery. But I've been very honest, and that's what I said to the folks at the city that I talked to. The program is, if I set a trap on somebody's property, for example, that person she's right there behind Forest Cemetery before you get to Carbondale Road. She started off with 4, her neighbor moved, she had no cats, her neighbor moved, left 4 cats behind. She started feeding, next spring she had 10. Now she's about at 20. Yep. She's a widow, she can't, she's like, I can afford to feed, but I just can't. It's not going to take long. From a veterinarian standpoint, you're going to have disease, distemper. We've all seen that. If you've been a farm kid ever in your life, I've seen that. It's an ugly thing to witness. And then you lose them all. The thing is to stay ahead of this, and that's the whole point in the TNR. You stay ahead of it, so you're continually trapping and releasing. But when I say release, that means they are going back there. She's fully aware of that. But again, that's why I wanted to talk with the city about liability issues, just to make sure. And one of the big questions was to anyone and everyone in the room is when an animal, how does a citizen declare ownership of that cat? So when I trap a cat and I take it and have it sterilized and I release it back, how do I know that the trap that entered is an actual community cat rather than your grandma's cat or your cat or your, what I'm saying?
Or you don't.
What's the accountability? And in many places it's a microchip.
Chip,
right. We need to do that.
Well, we talked about registering pets in the city, and that doesn't go very far because nobody wants more regulation, right? So yeah, I don't know.
I think
one of those things with signage. I know I've talked to the mayor and the folks in University Park. And they were right on board. We're going to put out, for X amount of days, we're going to put public notices that say we are going to start a TNR program. Make sure your cats are, housed and not outside. If they are, they run the risk.
Well, but at the same time, we talk about accountability. You see cats and dogs running loose all the time.
Yeah.
It's in city code already what an at-large animal is. If you let your cat run loose, you are in violation of city code. So I'm not concerned about that because you're already subject to whatever repercussions there are.
Right.
My opinion, Steve's nailed it on the head. It's accountability. And again, I think the city can take some responsibility for this as well. I'm sure it wasn't just last week that there's cat food, both wet and dry, on the tables, on the concrete, plates all over the place. Okay, it's been ongoing. Thank you to Chief and our Public Works Department as they're going around through the park, checking on status, making sure that summer's coming, checking on the quality of things. This is an issue. What do we do about it? Okay, why wasn't it addressed last year, year before, whenever? I don't know. I don't stop at Shelter C. Okay, but when we talk about TNR, the official program, I believe, is TRNM or TNRM, and the M is manage, and that's the piece with accountability that we're missing here. And how do we manage the program, whether it be an actual TNR program or it's a cat colony? How is it managed moving forward? And that's what we've got to figure out. And some of that is the legal ramifications for the city and liability. Some of it is what is the exact plan and steps that are going to be taken over the next, what period of time is it to where they're going to be moved? I think Christy said a football field south. Okay, I know the area where you're talking. What is the time in which this is going to be done? Right.
Well, yeah,
but then what are we doing
we gave
moving
a week,
forward?
right? So we got to figure that out.
Right.
Yeah.
But
We gave them a week to clean up all the junk.
Thursday of this week,
Yep.
she told us.
To clean up all the junk.
To clean up all those, to clean up the ditch down there and to move those shelters down. We would like a little bit more than a week to do it.
Yeah,
we have jobs and doctor's appointments.
I think
and
that at the end of the day, I think we're all sitting here saying the mess that was left at the shelter needs to be cleaned up, and I think Chief and his department already took fire hose down there and cleaned up best they could.
And
My
they're not
experience,
feeding their
my
cats.
experience with cats, again, like Steve, I didn't grow up on a farm, but I grew up on an acreage. We had a lot of cats. Cats, animals, whether it's a possum, a coon, or a cat, will go where the food is. And maybe you can't just stick it 100 yards away right away, but there needs to be a plan in place for how this is
You said
gonna
you aren't
be
feeding them there. Where are you feeding them at now?
Down along the wood line.
How far out are you from the shelter?
Probably about 20, 25
Okay. And they found you already, right? They found you already?
Yeah, they
Okay,
come
good.
to it in a couple of days.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look at the
I think it would be reasonable.
And we're waiting till they're done eating and pick up the plates
Yeah.
and don't leave
Okay.
any food
Yeah.
over there anymore.
Hey, I thought the tortilla idea was a good
Tortilla
idea. I would have never thought of that. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. You can bring some salsa.
Yeah, there you go.
So what could the council reasonably expect as far as getting these guys moved? How fast can it be done to get them off of city property? And we can stop thinking about any potential nuisances.
Well, we're not moving them off of city property, right? We're moving them down.
Well,
To clear.
I'd like to entertain the idea of the city not being deemed an owner because we are harboring animals on our property.
Right. If I could.
Except that we had an agreement.
Who had an agreement?
You had an agreement with the city manager. There weren't any rules or discussions
Right.
about it. We didn't have any, this has to be done or that had to be done. So neither one of us broke an agreement except that they could be there.
Mm-hmm. Where I'm
So
going
if
with
you-
this is,
If you put parameters on us now, we will meet them 100%. We can move those cats onto the neighboring, but they will come back.
why?
They will go back to the wooded area because that's where they live.
So where's their
That's
house
where they
at?
live.
If you house them and feed them someplace, why would they go back?
Yeah.
Because cats get up in the morning and they go on, they mark their territory. They take their faces and they move their faces. They have scent glands in the sides of their faces. And they go and they mark their territory, and they'll go back and take a nap, they'll wake up in the afternoon and do the same thing.
Okay.
They'll come back every morning.
But I think-
What I will tell you is that this lady this morning that I talked to told me that relocate's not an option because doesn't matter how far you relocate. She said you can move them 50 miles away and they'll either get back or die trying to get back. That's all she told me.
So what are they
that's a-
coming?
But we can relocate their home and feeding station away from the shelter, which gets them away from the shelter. So they're not eating by the shelter. They're getting used to hanging out away from the shelter.
That's where I'm wanting to go.
Right.
Is
I mean,
that
best case scenario, they're gonna love the news.
Not saying they won't walk up around there now and then, but there won't be any food up at the shelter. It's gonna be way down there. They're gonna be fed down there. Once they get used to their homes being down there, they'll start hanging out down there.
Because eventually
And then-
the area, eventually the area where they're hanging out now, that scent will wear off.
No, they
Yeah,
still
what I-
come there, and when they're not there anymore, then you'll have all the
Mhm.
wild cats that were there before, when there were 20 cats to start. Then you'll have all those cats that are unvaccinated, that aren't neutered, that will be spraying the horrible smells there. That's the problem we had to start with.
yeah. Presumably nobody feeding them.
And you have lots of kittens.
So I can give you this phone number. This lady, she was when somebody said it today that the ARL was really helpful. She answered the phone.
Right back there,
She's super. Well, I know, but she was super helpful and asked her all these questions. And I didn't ask her why. I just took her word for it when she told me doesn't matter how hard you try, they're coming back.
Yeah.
So I didn't ask her why. I didn't want to go into the details. I'll take her word for it. So.
Okay. But if we can get the feeding and housing off of city property, that would be, in my opinion, a great start.
It's not going to be off city property. It's just going to be on down south on the.
Yeah, so.
Now, it was my understanding there was a private owner who was saying that they were willing to take that.
Yeah,
Well, it's just around the corner from city property.
it's off city property though, right?
You
Right.
have to cross the street.
No.
Is it down in that gray house there on the corner? Is that where it is? The one that's right by the golf course?
Brett McBain's,
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, Brent's got the horses, Brent and Gina.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Okay.
down by the old ballpark or something down there. Is that right?
Yeah.
The property's about 900 feet to the south
Yeah.
Okay.
from the shelter.
And
It's
he-
before
and he
it's
would?
before
But
the
then
trail
we would
curves
get
back
into-
out to the golf.
But then you'd come back on him and saying, you have cats wandering around on your property, so now we're gonna confiscate these
To me, the biggest thing is that the shelter house was built for human use.
Right. And that's why if we can
And the
relocate them
cats,
down.
I don't care what animal it is, the shelter is designed for human use.
Yeah.
We need it to be available for human use. Now, again, I don't know how much it will be used, but it's not gonna be used, probably shouldn't be used if there's the food, there's the waste, and again, people talk about the bird waste. Birds hang out in rafters, that happens, but it will be less if there's not food there for them to eat, okay?
And there won't be. There hasn't been since fire chief cleaned it up.
So Bob, I'm not hearing the argument that they'll take it away from a shelter. I'm hearing the argument that they're not taking it far enough away to private property. Everybody sounds like, or not everybody, but several sound like they want to have it off the city property.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I was going to add to.
Well, Charlie looked at the area that we talked about moving it to yesterday, and it looked like a great area.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, you move them down. If you stand at the, I mean, my opinion is 1 to 7. You stand at the shelter, see and look down. There's a bench there, and that was quote unquote my benchmark for where you can move them, and they would be reasonably, I would think, away from the trail, away from people. I mean,
And it's still.
I would estimate. I mean, maybe 400 feet. I don't know, Steve. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's about right. Isn't there some stuff down there now, like benches or something,
there
or
is.
something like that?
Sort of
that's what I
picnic
thought,
tables
yeah.
are stored.
Yeah.
Benches piled there for years that have been broken
Yeah.
in the park and
Yeah.
dragged down.
Sewer tiles, barbed wire.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But anything you want to throw in a junkyard is down there.
It's down in there, yeah. I know where
And
it's
you
at.
see, you want to protect against liability. I'll tell you what, that place down there is the biggest liability you've got.
Yeah, it
But
is.
Mayor, speaking to your issue, maybe we can compromise, move them down to that bench area, say for 6 months. If you're saying this isn't working out for us, then we can move them on around the corner to to the private property, but at least we're moving them in stages instead of really
Trying to
moving
get
them
them
quite a
out.
ways away all at once.
And that was what I was thinking was brought up earlier in the conversation was, that there is a method apparently, if it's even 10 feet at a time, of
Yeah.
moving them along. And
But if
that's-
you don't get any complaints and the shelter's being kept clean and we build cat houses that are, aesthetically feasible to the eye, which even you can't even see them from the bike trail
But the-
now.
Can I?
So,
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that this discussion has been good because I know at DMAC, when we were talking about feral cats, people were screaming at each other, refused to talk to each other. It's a very emotional issue, and you take the same picture, and people see it in very different ways. And I just adopted a cat. I fell in love with Frank from the shelter. I haven't had a cat since I was 4. So that completely surprised me. I was open to, but we've got the difference between domestic and feral, and we have the argument about private property, and public lands, and those are different. We also have something that's become very personal, these 4 cats, versus policy, because we do have to have a policy as city, because if we say, oh, we let this, and, who knows, somebody wants to bring a donkey in, and they want to do this, or they want to do that. So perhaps a compromise could be those 4 cats. 6. Oh, okay.
And they're at the end of their lifespan.
Right.
If we're talking about young ones, I'd be 100%.
So if those 6 cats, because we have been negligent for over 10 years as the city and not enforcing our own policy.
It wasn't well planned back then.
It wasn't well planned, and you
At
did
all.
have a verbal agreement, and verbal agreements hold up
It
in
was never
law.
and
followed
when
up.
Michael Schrock approved this in
Yeah.
2014, if we would have thought in 2023 someone would have come along and said, you got 24 hours to get rid of those cats,
Yeah.
we would have never done it.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have put our heart and
Right.
soul in it for
Right.
the last.
And that's the personal
we would have just
versus
said
the policy.
euthanize them and be done with it.
But we have to have a policy, and we've
And going
inherited this
forward, that's a good
history.
idea.
What?
Going forward, that's a good idea.
But there has to be, can't we compromise and grandfather these
Maybe
cats in that
grandfather
have
those
been-
6, but then no more. There is
Right.
no more.
We're not asking for it. We've been, like I said, we've taken 25 cats out
And
of
with
there.
all those suggestions you said, down farther, away from the shelter, away from a nice looking place, you can build, trust me, there's cat palaces out there that are gorgeous. Okay, I did not know.
$160.
I know.
Two that I bought off
They're not
as good as the one
I
I
fell
built.
into the cat world partly thanks to Bob, and now I'm like, wow.
Amal,
But
did
I
you
also
have
have
something
a
you-
very public policy.
I was going to say, I understand there's a lot of history here, but we are in the process of cleaning up the city. And part of my assessment, asking staff and to go and assess all park properties in the city and the condition in all the properties, and they came back with the situation that something we need to address right away. We have to address that nuisance item. We have to work on condition here and everywhere else. So we have to start somewhere, and it's now. Otherwise, quality of life is not a priority for this city. So all we are asking is more regulation, a way to manage the condition going forward, and I would be open to a legally binding contract with the animal shelter. As my understanding, the previous conversation that the previous city manager had was with the animal shelter. And I was concerned when my staff went and checked with them, and they seem not to have anything to do with the program anymore. So who's accountable? So my understanding, the city allowed the program to go on with the understanding that there is an organization that is managing this program.
And as recent as 21-22, the animal shelter put out a yearly report saying continuing management of feral colony. I've got it right on my phone. So for them to say that they don't have anything to do with it when they put in their report, continue management of feral colony as recent as last year.
seems kind of funny when they try to tell you they don't have anything to do with it.
Yeah,
which I believe they said.
And that's the step we
But-
took as staff, going to the people who were in charge of the program and asking for what are you going to do since we have this condition. As city, we enforce code enforcement on everybody, and we better start with ourselves. So, and that deadline we gave you a week. The goal is to clean up that junk. Still, I think we have 12 houses, and we all learned today there are 6 cats. Why not go and clean up the rest of the houses? Why do we need 12 in there? And they don't look like colony. They look like junk in a park.
Well, you can tell which houses are being occupied and which are not, especially down at the bottom by the creek and all.
Yeah.
So.
And cats don't care about aesthetics, but we do.
So.
We still have to discuss the policy changes too, Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, we still have to get to that, but, so, council consensus. Is there, I guess I threw it out on the table, I'll ask if I've got anybody that thinks it's a good idea to pursue a movement away from the shelter and further south, ultimately going on to private property.
I'm not hung up on the private property thing, as long as I could get Dave to tell me. Dave bummed down on this tonight. I'd be asking him right now what he thought, but if he can make me feel comfortable that we're protected, I think we're thinking too small, but that's not the first time that I've thought that about anything, right? I mean, I think we need to think bigger. If we've got, after talking to this lady this morning, this needs to be something we embrace.
Right.
But it needs to be done correctly, right? And so, and I'm not blaming anybody or anything like that. We've got a chance to start over and do it right. With all the knowledge that we have now, let's do that. And I think we need to embrace it. And we say, well, we're going to be done at 6 cats. Well, what about all the rest of them that are out there? I mean, that doesn't mean they're all just going to disappear. As soon as these 6 die, the rest of them aren't going to just leave because these are dead.
Right, no, I didn't mean
you
that.
know, so I just think that we've got an opportunity here to address a situation that affects more than just these 6 cats in our community. And I think we need to spend some time discussing it, figuring it out, come up with a plan.
Yeah.
And I don't care whether it's on city property or not, as long as Dave can convince me that we're safe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did read when Des Moines got it passed, they went through an organization called Alley Cat Allies, which helped come up with all of the regulations, things like that.
Yeah, that's the beauty of this. We're not reinventing the wheel. It's being done in other places. We just got to go steal the wheel from somebody.
So at this point, with all due respect, I'm wanting to focus on just the 6. And so, you know, we can go another direction later.
I don't care whether we go on private property or not. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anyone that feels strongly that we should not?
Should not clarify our choices.
Should not
Could you
make
just
it
clarify our
to.
choices? I'm getting tired. So should we not?
Should not try to transition over to private property.
Do you want the end result to be they end up on private property?
I want the end results to be.
I haven't got the 100% from that guy. He
Right.
just threw it out there,
Right.
so.
Knowing what I've learned of cats, it could be a difficult transition, but I definitely would like to try moving that way. Cats can learn a lot, you know. I mean, I know they do follow food. A can of tuna, they will.
Well, and where I'm going with that is the whole idea of just moving any nuisance attributes further and further away, so that the shelter house, any urine smells, the whole thing, you know, can make its way further down into a more natural setting. So.
I'm in agreement with. Go ahead, Charlie.
I was just going to say, you know, I can get behind that, Mayor, but I want to hear from that property owner first.
Yeah.
That he is indeed, and I don't disagree with, I don't distrust Christie at all. I just want to hear from the property owner myself as well.
Yep. Okay.
I agree.
Yeah, because it is public land, and public land can't have. But that was a decision that should have been done 10 years ago.
Yeah. So it sounds like, so along that vein then, we would need to have some understanding, if not an agreement, that would say this is, you know, what we want to accomplish is the movement of the housing and feeding area away from the shelter house, and then tucked into any kind of agreement is a timeline as to when we think it can be done, those sorts of things, some sort of benchmarks, so we know that there's compliance.
And that's the small problem, those 6
Right,
cats.
right, that's
And
all
then
I'm on track right now.
Absolutely, the feral cat issue needs to be taken care of because that's horrifying. Yeah.
Those cats started out as 20 cats
Right.
that were a nuisance.
Right.
They're
Mm-hmm.
The mistaken notion is feral cats kill
So we
rodents.
moved
No, they
on
kill
that,
songbirds.
then you have the
Yeah.
20 nuisance cats to deal with.
Right.
To me, Mayor, I'm in agreement with Steve that if David Dixon is comfortable from a liability standpoint and we can get them transitioned farther south, I think that eliminates the attraction potentially to the shelter, but just not feeding them at the shelter is priority number one. I think from my standpoint, no feeding at the shelter, and there should be no food dishes, water, anything within, I don't know what that requirement, what that distance is.
Well,
I'm not an
300
expert.
feet's a football field, right? So,
Yeah, again, we need to get it farther down. I'm not as concerned about the cats themselves as I am a shelter not being able to be used. So let's start with that. I think that we can learn a lot, as Steve said, about the TNRM program. And I won't approve anything without without a process of management moving forward.
Right, right.
That's my take.
But eventually they come off the property, down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, this group. Yep.
Yeah.
But we're also saying we're not going to just immediately kill these cats.
No,
I mean, that's
nobody
that's-
said that. Nobody is.
Right. No, but I mean,
didn't
it's
say
an agreement, it's sad, right, because you don't want that. That's where people will be screaming at each other, and rightly so.
Definitely we don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And any of these programs, especially moving forward, always goes hand in hand with an education, public education program, right? So, I mean, again, I will say it over and over again, feral cats began from human abandonment of cats. That's how the
we
problem
create our own
starts in a
problems.
community. So you've got to educate your community, young and old, about responsible pet ownership and what that looks like.
Yeah.
So.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
So the way I hear it, then we'll start cleaning up the park, the old cat houses that we don't use anymore. We'll start relocating the other cat houses, the nicer looking ones, the bigger ones that are well insulated, down. We're not feeding the cats at the shelter anymore, but we'll start feeding them further down and getting used to migrating on down further south.
And see if we can get a vaccination, even just a rabies vaccination.
Yeah.
And just some other things that I can discuss with them, like we take our garbage with us.
I was just about to say, you need to take your waste
We
with
don't
you.
utilize, everybody
Yeah.
has that.
God, you read my
Most of
mind.
the times we have people with a wash bottle with, a soapy water and you spray an area if you're on concrete. I mean, there's all those things, I'm more than happy to talk through with folks. So
Yeah.
there shouldn't be any signs.
Right.
Cats, that's the whole point.
That's the point. That's what we're looking
They're supposed to blend in.
The camping
right?
motto, leave it better than you found it.
Exactly.
Camping motto. And Dr. Carmichael, too, would be she's been helpful with the K-9 program and
Okay.
some of that, too.
Yeah,
And
so, I mean, this would have to, in comment that was made over here, was that we would even want it to go so far as the bag that cat food is in would not be disposed of at the
Absolutely
shelter.
not. You take it with
So,
you. It doesn't stay in the park.
okay.
Or cat food cans, things like that.
Because cat food is,
Would it be our intention to get this in writing as an MOA, and a memorandum, or MOU?
Well, and this is where I'm stumbling around a little bit. Any ideas on an agreement?
I
or
think we
plan?
need an agreement with Stephen Memorial Shelter.
yes.
So, okay, so they would take the legal ownership of this colony.
And organizing the volunteer program.
Okay, okay.
And a timeline.
Right.
We're gonna start working on that right away.
Yeah. Because Stephen Memorial is a private organization that we give funds
Transition.
to, but they're not a city organization.
They're a nonprofit.
Right.
Nonprofit.
Nonprofit, yeah. So that, therefore, we do need that.
We could live with,
Yeah, I'm sure they
if you can see up there,
Yeah. so-
if you can see up there, that's the map. The blue to your left is the shelter C. So we want it to be as far as possible from the shelter and the trail. So
Go
we
work
can
for a
we can
while.
go
Yeah.
east to the, what is it?
There used to be a
softball.
softball park there.
Yes, and or close to the dog park. The dotted brown is the dog park.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So the first action item then would be to have the conversation with the Stephen Memorial Animal
Stephen
Shelter.
Memorial. We tried to
take this
reach
over.
reach out to them.
I'm one of the directors.
Yes, today Alex was trying to
I
reach
tried
out,
to
but
call multiple times today. Do you guys have an extra number that I can call?
Those on Mondays.
Okay. Is there somebody I can call tomorrow? You can call me. Okay.
Okay.
and then we're also seeking direction from council on putting further regulation on the code. We have
Yeah.
everything in the code already.
Yep, and so I think in our agenda item, we have 3 bullet points in there regarding City Code 604050. First bullet point, no animals allowed within 50 feet of the pool, park shelter, playground, or ball field in a city park, except for service animals. That was one.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Sure.
You can have them on a leash though, right?
Yes.
Okay, but that's not what that says.
That's what that
No,
says.
yes, but there are exceptions. So this is just to have the conversation.
Okay.
Okay.
We will start working on the draft of the code,
Okay.
including the exceptions. My understanding, there is a program where we allow dogs in the swimming pool.
Okay.
So that would be
Yeah,
among the
okay.
exception.
All right, cool.
Exception.
All right.
Okay.
So
All right, thank you.
we're good as long as we are clear.
Yeah, all right.
Okay. And then second bullet point, no animal allowed in any area of the city park unless it's attached to a leash. We go so far as to say no more than 6 feet in length and of sufficient strength to restrain the animal when the leash is held by a person capable of restraining and controlling the animal, unless the city park is designated by the Oskaloosa City Council as an off-leash park. The dog park comes to mind.
And what I like about that one, Mayor, is that the 6-foot leash
Yes.
is already in city code.
It is.
Yep.
But what this item, what this description further defines is referencing the off-leash park, which is the dog park. So everything else is consistent with what is already city code.
Yep.
It's just a
You can
slight
almost
addition.
make that item C. Or is it? Oh, you don't have it up. Oh, shoot. I just had it. Yeah, so under 6.04.050, item B talks about some of this which is written in here, but as far as the 6 foot, that's brought out in the definition above. Okay,
For a leash.
yeah, the leash, yeah.
Start my day, I'm sure you did
So I think between B and maybe making this a C or something, I don't know, they're very similar, what you have there.
Okay.
So,
And then finally, the bullet point about no animal shelters being placed in a city park. I think we're working to that end if we can.
yeah, I have a comment on that one. I don't think that needs to be in this part of the code, because there is a city code, it's 2.32.200, unlawful use of city property. And maybe we could put something in there, no permit or temporary structure shall be allowed on city-owned property, something in that nature.
Of course.
You know, because that could be whatever, you know.
I think
Bob's Pup Tent, you know.
Yeah. Hey, don't talk about me
Okay.
that way.
You could,
I think, yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Because I'm learning about cats, my family is not going to let me get a cat backpack. You might want to add, there's a leash, but also a container. Sometimes people bring a cat in
Oh,
a
a kennel?
container, or they have a dog cart or a bicycle cart. You know that the animal's in that. So there's things that animals can be in parks. Yeah, it gets.
And I think in the at-large definition,
some people bring the cat along,
it
but
actually
it's in the
references a
container.
kennel. It
Yeah,
references a
kennel,
kennel
okay.
already in the at-large. I
Yeah,
think
so the kennel or other
the other
suitable
piece in
container.
that same paragraph that Joe's referencing with the definitions, I mean,
Okay.
this is not part of what the agenda item is, but in the at-large section, it specifically references the dog is on the premises of the owner. And should that be broadened to animal?
Yeah.
I found it interesting as you're reading it, that it specifically states dog, and I'm not, maybe there's a legal reason why.
Yeah.
But
But people
that's
walk
the
around
other
with
piece.
snakes, they do other stuff. I'm like,
My only concern was just with the first bullet point, but I think, in hearing Steve and Amal talk, I think that kind of alleviated that. I just, the way I read that, it makes it seem like we're basically banning dogs from
Right.
Edmondson
Right.
Park. So I think we just need to cinch that language up.
Yep. And also, Sean is working on small animal ordinance. There is a zoning code, so we'll be allowing more
Perfect.
animals.
Look forward to seeing this.
Okay. 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 Got enough to work with them all?
Yes. Thank
Okay. Getting to the end of the agenda, reports on items from city staff. City manager, busy with anything?
I'm good with TNR. They're good programs, and I love cats.
Go on record.
She's my favorite cat lady now.
Yeah, there we go. City clerk, anything?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay, and we will assume the city attorney had nothing to say anyhow.
not here,
So. Okay, council members, we have the opportunity to go around the way. We also have an opportunity to talk about any information reports you have on your various boards and committees. We'll start with you, Lisa.
No, I have been impressed since I moved here. It's a very animal-friendly place. And even, I've seen grasshoppers here that I never saw in Des Moines. So we've got less pesticides, all sorts of things. So anyway.
Okay. Joe?
Can't follow up.
You can't top that?
Man, girl.
He loves me.
No, I can't.
Okay, Charlie?
Mayor, is this the appropriate time to request an agenda item for the future?
Usually I like to get those by email.
Okay.
So that way we've got a chance to research them.
I can do that, but I just want to say real quickly, let's see, and I've been attending city council meetings since '07. I think this is the longest one I've been to since Brad Ryman presented on insurance approval. And I do, but in the meantime, in all the years in between then, I've been at different meetings, serving on the school board. We had some very controversial meetings and they got very heated with the public comment. Thank you to you guys and the way you presented this. That's how things get done.
Yep.
It was the right way, so.
Okay. Janet?
Oskaloosa Main Street is still looking for a director, so anybody who knows anyone who is interested, please send them our way. Also, we are gonna start community events soon. I think the first weekend in June is when they start ramping up, so be on the lookout for those. And if you are interested in volunteering, we have many spots open. So.
No, I don't know about that part.
Bob?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay. Rhonda?
No, I'd like to, on Charlie's note, everybody comes up to you and before we come to council and they're like, Rhonda, I'm coming to council, I'm going to complain about this, and no one ever shows up. So I'm glad that you guys came too, because it is important. I mean, we see it one way and you guys see it the other, and if we have to work together, and I get it. So I'm glad you guys came.
Steve?
I'm all good, thank you.
Okay. One of the commissions that I'm on is involved with landfill operations, and one of the initiatives that's going to be coming up with that is the desire to try recycling glass. The container that is used for such things is a roll-off container. Lessons learned from the last time we tried to mess around with recycling glass in Oskaloosa, this one's going to be designed in such a way as it's much harder to have busted glass on the ground around it. Big purple thing, the director, manager of the landfill was going to be contacting Walmart to see if it could be placed out there. And so we'll see if that works out or not, but it'll catch your eye if you do see it. So that's all I had. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Well, before we do that, anybody have anything else they want to talk about? I didn't think so. We're adjourned.
Good job getting us out of here.